Today we've got a guest who's not just a great coach, but a true leader in shaping winning cultures. Dwayne Page is a college baseball coach at St. Joseph's University on Long Island, where he's played a pivotal role in building the program's identity. In 2024, St. Joe's captured the Skyline Conference Championship, a testament to the team's culture and the foundation Dwayne has helped establish. Before stepping into coaching, Dwayne was behind the dish himself, catching at both the Division II and Division III levels at Dowling College and SUNY New Paltz. Since 2016, he's been coaching at amateur baseball as a head coach in the high school and travel level, while also working as a private hitting and catching instructor. Beyond coaching, Dwayne has been my co-host for the Behind the Mask leadership development calls since 2020, where we've worked together to develop leaders both on and off the field. His biggest strengths lie in leadership development and cultivating a strong team culture, something we'll dive into today.
And then we have three good catchers. And the fourth one who, you know, the fourth one's good too. Like they're all good, in my opinion. I just, so it's crazy. But it depends on the pitching. But then one of our new pitchers, who the kid's a transfer, he throws yesterday. I mean, he threw 2 days ago. I wasn't there because I was out sick. And he threw better than our one. And I was like, they're like, oh, do this. I was like, well, we need him to. They're like, yeah, this is great, man. I didn't even know. I'm like, it doesn't matter what you know. That's what we need. We need him to be that good if we want to get past the regional.
Yeah, these conversations are reminding me of last year when on the Behind the Mask we were talking about, like you were talking with the players about how some of the different guys you had and the who's going to start or who's going to play more and how the dynamics are going from the coach's perspective throughout the preseason, and it's exciting because I love following you guys.
Yeah, it's your favorite college baseball team, so I understand. But what it leaves you with a sense of comfort because like you never hope for these things. You anticipate them, but some guys are going to go down, whether it's from injury or struggling or just not performing. And it's good to know that you have options. Now, will some things change when you get another team wearing a different colored uniform on the other side? Like, yeah, because some guys just do better under the pressure, but it feels good. And especially now we're into live at bats now, inside, of course, but it's been really nice to see because it's the focus right now. The focus is there. Like the first couple of days of practice, we looked a little bit like out of shape and kind of lax because it wasn't like the first day of practice in a good way because they had been doing their stuff, it seems like. But Cap was kind of like, listen, dude, it's fucking go time. Like, at first he was kind of like, oh, I don't want this to be the first day. Like, oh, first day, and everybody's like, oh, whatever. But then, things weren't looking so tight, and he was like, we need to fucking, that type of shit. But it's been locked in now. Like I think I told you about this last year. Our approaches off the pitching machine last year sucked because they hadn't done it a lot. But me, having done it with my high school guys so extensively and seen the benefit of it, and then also saying like, hey, listen, fucking Division One teams do not use RMBP pregame. They hit off the machine. Like, why aren't we doing stuff like that? Why are we saying, oh, the machines, if it doesn't work for our guys, then it doesn't work? No, it has to work. They have to learn how to do it. Period. And I was so hardcore on that. I'm not saying that the other coaches on staff were against it. But what I'm saying is the first day we freaking rolled that thing out, the hack out, they struggled, and some of the coaches were kind of like, maybe it's something we can't use. I'm like, no. If I was able to dial that machine up velocity wise, having it, I actually followed your advice, or maybe it was you, had it on the ground to the top of the zone with freaking rise to it with my high school guys to help them feel like above and through, or not late getting the barrel in front of their body. If I was able to have high school guys do that, and then us be one of the best hitting fastball teams in the league at high school, you're telling me that college baseball players can't do that? You know what I mean? Like, so I was like, no, I was so hell bent on that. And then you see this year, they obviously know at this point because we stuck with it last year. It's not going away. And the approach to it is so much better. It's so nice to see. Like day one of the hack this year, last week, it was so good to see. I was so happy to see it. And the younger guys too. The younger guys like the freshman class, I love. I really do, because their approach to everything is it's so good. Much it's so much more mature than you would anticipate a freshman class being, which is so good to see, man.
This kind of conversation is, I think, how our friendship kind of started, where things like this would come up and you talk about your guys and what you're going through, and then I'd bounce ideas off it, ask questions, and we go back and forth. And
Yeah.
as motivated, or as much as I would like to have that conversation with you about your team right now, and we'll get into it, the purpose of today is actually to go through kind of your origin story, your background, and to fill in some things that I don't know about you, and to give, I guess, our viewers a sense of who the heck is Dwayne, this mythical guy who I call my best friend.
Yeah, yeah, man. I mean, it's such an interesting it's interesting to me, the journey, because obviously it's sometimes when you work in this game, and just when you're around it, it can be so there's to me anyways, this is just kind of how I am. I'm a person that can take that introspective type approach and be like thinking about what it is that I'm doing and analytical and stuff. And I feel as though I can also be that person that's just grinding. And if you ask me about what I ate for breakfast, I can't remember. If you ask me about what I watched on TV a day ago, I can't remember, because it's grind time. I get fixated on things. Um, so when it's time, especially in this time of year when it's grind time, it's such a different. I really have to kind of pull myself out of that mindset to be able to sit back and be like, wow, how did this really start? You know?
Do you feel like getting fixated on things and being very focused on one aspect of, I guess, your experience, is that something that you developed, or is that just how you are?
Um, I think that's just how I am. It's how I am with everything, really. Um, I think it could be that, like, it was that way for school. It was that way for lots of things. But a skill that I've acquired later in life is being able to recognize when I'm in that state and it is necessary and helpful, and recognize when I do need to give myself some time to take a look at other areas of my life to see what might need some more attention, because I can definitely get into a mode where it's not intentional. Like, there's never an intentional slack off or give in some areas. It's just you only have so much energy and focus that when you kind of dial in on something in particular, you're going to, I guess, I want a better term, but slack off in some other areas. You can sort of neglect certain things. But I would say that baseball was the biggest teacher of that type of approach, so to speak, because it's all I ever wanted to do. From the time, I guess,
Yeah, how did it start?
yeah, I mean, it's different. It's a hell of a lot different than yours. It was a very conscious thing at a young age. If you ask my parents, which I knew that this episode was coming, But, my parents and I spend a good amount of time together when I have time to give. In particular, on a weekend night, we'll go out to dinner and we'll chat for a long time and stuff. And the last couple weeks, it came up where they talked about me and how I was able to talk at such a young age. And my dad, who was a correction officer, he on his breaks he would call home, and I don't listen. For the nerds out there that are going to say that I wasn't talking this young, but my mom makes it seem like I was barely over a year and I was having full conversations. I wasn't saying like mama, dada. I was like having a full conversation. I was just talking from such a young age, and my dad would call. I would know it was him on the phone, and we would talk. And he would ask me like, "What's going on? Like, what's mommy doing?" That kind of stuff. We would have a conversation, and it was funny because my sister is, I think, 17 months younger than me, something like that. And when she was born, she took much longer to speak than I did because, from what my parents say, is if she wanted or needed something, she didn't even say anything to me. I just knew what it was, and I would like give it to her, whether it was like a toy or her bottle or something. Like I would just make sure that whatever she needed, she had from a young age. So she took a much longer time, and I want to say I remember, but it sounds inaccurate because I'm talking about me being like 2 or 3 years old that I would be remembering this. But I feel like I remember my parents being concerned that she would just never talk. And it was partially because, like I said, I was the person who was talking to everybody and getting her what she needed. And in relation to baseball, my aptitude, I guess, for the game came so young because as soon as I could walk, I'm freaking hitting things. Like my dad just giving me a bat. We were just playing in the yard. It's all I wanted to do was hit a ball and watch baseball. I would just sit on his lap from probably before I could even walk and stuff, and we would watch the Yankees play. And it was a good time to watch the Yankees, being the late 90s when they won all those World Series. And I also say to my sister that they lost in 97 because she was born. It was all her fault. But I was like, damn, they would have won freaking like 4 years in a row or whatever. And she was like, oh, that's not why. But, me just being a jackass, that's what I would say. But I could tell, and it wasn't like some parents talk about nowadays. Yeah, I'm watching the game and then I'll pause it and I'll say, why did this happen? I was just interested. I could tell you everybody's name on the roster from freaking Bernie Williams to Paul O'Neill, Tino Martinez, Chuck Knobloch, like all those guys. Like I mentioned, I knew the whole lineup. I knew double plays and foul balls and catchers. And like I knew everything. And I couldn't get enough of it. And it would go into, playing like baseball video games with my dad. And he, again, the way my parents tell it, and I do remember being in T-ball earlier than I should have been, because I think you start T-ball at like 5 or 6, but I was a pretty big 4-year-old. So when I was 4, my dad put me in T-ball, and I would just like smash the freaking ball, dude. I would just smash it, and it was the typical, parents were like, this kid hits the ball too hard, and my dad couldn't say, he's 4 because I wouldn't have been allowed to play apparently. And again, another story of my parents. And listen, we all know that parents' stories can sometimes be a little bit embellished, but it makes sense. I do believe these stories because I know that when I was playing, like I was imagining that I was like Derek Jeter. Like I'm telling you right now, man, it was that kind of a relationship where I was just so dialed at a young age into baseball. But you know how like a typical T-ball environment is. Everybody bats, everybody, you hit until the whole lineup's done. And there's a kid on first base, and I'm playing shortstop. A ground ball gets hit to me, and instead of just like throwing it to first base, it was like, come on, Dwayne, throw it to first. I pick up the ball, I step on first, and then I step on second, and then I throw it to first. And my dad was like, damn, this kid is actually paying attention to what's going on when he's watching these games. So it was really cool. And I played I went on from that and I started playing youth baseball at Connecticut Youth Association, which
So
is
before we get to that, I'm going to cut you off a little bit.
yeah.
So what I'm hearing, and it was so cool for me to hear that early, when you're in your infancy or toddler age, that you were already a strong communicator and concerned with knowing what others need and being able to sense what others need and then trying to provide that. Because I think those are some of your greatest strengths today.
Yeah, dude. I mean, again, like I can't sit here and I remember that my sister would scoot across the floor like she wasn't a crawler. She would scoot and do stuff like that. And I'm telling you, I do remember that she did take a while to speak, and listening to my parents tell the story, it makes sense. I have always had like a good relationship with her, and it definitely carried over. You know, I was always very sensitive to how people felt and what people thought. You know, which is definitely detrimental at times. You know, because you want to leave a good impression, and you want to, and to some regards, you want to make people happy, and you want people to have a good experience. Um, Not something you're necessarily super conscious of when you're a toddler, but you know, it's just something that I just did. I guess I don't really know.
It's fascinating. We have, like you had mentioned, we have very different experiences with
Yeah,
all that. But
yeah.
I want to let you continue. So you're watching these games, you're just falling in love with it. Like you have a really intimate relationship with you playing, but then you're tying it to the things you're seeing on TV, and then
Hmm.
so now you kind of graduate from T-ball coach pitch and you head to Connect what?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and it was also like games in the backyard. Like my uncle lived with us too. It was my dad, my uncle, my mom, and my sister until you know one of my brothers was born when I was 4, and we're just playing in the backyard all the time. We used to have a couple trees back there, and that would be our home plate, and we would just it was every single day, dude. Every day we're just playing. That's all I wanted to do. And then I get into youth baseball, and dude, it's so sick. You know, like you described when you were talking about like how the teams used to be like MLB teams and stuff. We had sponsored teams by like local businesses and stuff. They were still like the Yankees, Red Sox, all that stuff, but instead of like that, it would be this logo, but the shirt would have like a business on it and say like the something something Yankees or whatever, which was so cool. And I actually have a picture of a couple that I recently was looking at from those days, but it was just it was super competitive. But that was when I started to realize like, hey, this is fun, and I just can't get enough of it. I want to do more. And around like the age of 7, I tried out for my first travel team, which was just the Connecticut Chiefs, I believe. And I tried out. It was an 8U travel team, and I remember the coach, the freaking nicest dude in the world. I'll never forget that guy. Um, and he was he at the time, obviously, again, these are things that I realized later in life, but this guy was just such a different type of coach that I would then experience for the rest of my life. Such a warm dude, like a teacher of the game, and had a real culture to and sense of belonging to a team. And again, you're not aware of it. You're just like, wow, this guy's so freaking nice and he's cool, and he's this guy's a freaking man. Like I love playing for this guy and stuff. Like, but like I remember he would like after practice he'd be like I really care about you guys. You guys are awesome. Like I love coming here and coaching you guys and teaching you guys like and all this stuff. And it was just like, damn, I can't wait to freaking go to practice. And like me and so many of my I guess colleagues, the guys that I work around, other coaches, we talk about that. Like kids nowadays seem like when they go to practice, they it's as if they're going to work, and it's like, oh, I'm going to practice. But then, man, all I wanted to do was go to practice and play games. This dude was just like a serious, like Downey says this all the time, serious energy provider. Like you wanted to
Mm.
work, and when we got to practice, we're working on all those different kinds of things. And he demanded like a certain level of focus from the 7 and 8 year olds. But we were all of like mind. Like we all wanted to learn. We all wanted to be a team that was fundamentally sound, which sounds crazy
When you're
to.
that age, it's when you're that age in general, you tend to think that like the world revolves around you and what you're doing is most important because that's how, you know, you're wired to think that way anyways at that age. But then parents and coaches and teachers like they make it like, oh, you're going to this later, that's exciting, like, and you feel that way. It's very, especially when you're younger, like it's very about the player. Like that coach, you guys felt it that you were going there to get better and it was something special, and the coach was there because they were interested in you guys. And I think there's a lot of that can be lost
Yeah,
nowadays.
yeah,
And not to derail from the story, but I wanted to highlight that
yeah,
you had what seems like a pure, that's what a coach is, right? It's taking what the players have within them and pulling it out of them. And you had someone that you had an experience of that as a player, that player coach relationship very early.
yeah. And he had a couple other guys. He had a couple guys come on and help. Like there was an assistant coach or two. And then there was a guy who started coming around because his son was on the team, and that guy then became my coach a couple years later. But he would come down and talk to us about hitting because, as I would learn a little bit later, he had a successful college career and was and was like a sports writer. So he would come down and talk about hitting and stuff, and so it was such a community feel with that team. You know what I mean? Like it was such it's something that is very much lost nowadays, where the head coach is somebody who is that pillar of the team, has an assistant coach or two that provides some good structure, and honestly just a couple other hands to help out with practice. And we were good too. It wasn't just kids that lived in the district. It was kids that came over from other districts because they knew that that team was good. So we had like guys from ESM, we had guys from, the Sachem districts. So we were a quality team, and we won a good amount, which, you get exposed to that first championship like feeling, and it's like, wow, this is what this could be like, cuz you're sitting there watching, for me at a very young age, you're watching the Yankees play in the World Series, you're like, wow, this is you can't even fathom what that is. Being a 4, 5, 6 year old kid watching guys play in the Worlds, you have no idea what that even means. But to you, it's playing in a tournament championship game or a little league championship game, an unbelievable type of feeling. And that's all I wanted to do. Was I was like, I want to freaking play in the World Series and win. That's all I wanted to do from a young age. It was not even excuse me. It was not I wanted to be a guy that hits home runs. It was not I wanted to be a guy that hits 500. Yes, did I learn at a young age that those things were what good players did? And not even home runs, just I would say the emphasis was more on getting on base, RBIs, and batting average. Typical, right? That ages me a little bit, but it was an emphasis on winning the game and doing whatever you could to win the game from a very young age. Um, so, I get a little bit further into travel baseball. A couple different teams. We play as the Chiefs for a couple of years, and then we become like the Titan Storm, which was sort of a transition from my friend's dad's travel organization, the Pavco Storm, and
Dwayne, I gotta, can you, I think you're moving the microphone on the table a little bit. It's making some extra noise.
okay, Kip, is this good here?
Yeah.
I was just trying to lower it a little bit while I was talking because it
Yeah.
felt
Well, just
okay.
fix it. Yeah, just fix it and
Okay.
then we'll keep going. It's no big deal.
Yep. Okay. So yeah, like I was saying, um, we get a couple of more years of experience. We make that transitional team, the Titan Storm. I think that was like 11U or something. Again, we're just a very good local travel baseball team. But now the Titan Storm, we make that transition from the Chiefs over to that team now, where it's not a town travel team, it's now a private travel baseball team, and we get these different uniforms, and it's like, oh, we feel like we're super important now, and it feels different, you know. And this is around the time where I'm now playing in an environment that's a little bit more intense, and stuff is being demanded of you on a regular basis. And now I can start to feel myself get some like nervousness around certain moments and stuff, because every moment feels like it means something. It's not just me playing the game. It's now centered around my own personal performance. So I started doing things like, I think my dad would take me to batting lessons. I did some lessons with Keith Osick when I was young, former big leaguer, and that's when I started my whole training. Was probably around 10, 11 years old. And it would be like early over at MLI, which was in Middle Country at the time.
Dwayne, can you explain your motivations during these batting lessons or just when you start to work on these things from a personal standpoint? Because something we've talked about a lot in the past is like that you have this community nature to you, this sensitivity to how others are doing. You have this experience growing up where it's like winning and being part of a championship is so important uh, as uh, as a team. But now you're also recognizing that the individual aspect is important. Can you just, at that age at least, can you talk about how you balance those things or your thoughts on them?
I wanted to win, and I wanted to perform every single at bat. I wanted to get a hit, and I realized I wasn't getting a hit every at bat. And obviously it was something that I understood that you would get out, but it it was like I spent so much time already at this point, I should have said, like on a tee in the backyard, hitting off a tee for hours, like every day. And not because it was my dad saying, you got to do, like, I just wanted to do it. I needed more of it. So, when, I wouldn't even say it was because I struggled or anything, but I felt like I could be better. And I don't remember how it started, but I think my dad just had this idea to go do lessons. And I saw it as I didn't see it as an opportunity to learn from a big leaguer. It was just like, oh, this guy's a major league baseball player or was a major league baseball player. He could probably teach me some things, or he's gonna make me a better hitter. Is probably what the approach was as a kid, because that's a normal approach from a 10 or 11-year-old kid. Is this guy's gonna make me better because he's a former big leaguer. And Keith did provide some really good structure for me. He did. He definitely emphasized some things like being able to hit the ball the other way, those kinds of things, some better mechanics, and it was a good experience, honestly. And Keith was such a good, like, he was a good guy to have your lesson experience with, I would say, because he wasn't like super serious in regards to intensity. He created this, and I wish that I had taken this the approach that he took with me personally. You know what I mean? I wish that I had internalized his approach to us doing that kind of work, and taken that out of those lessons rather than the mechanical approach or being able to drive the ball the other way. I wish that I had been like a little bit more chill about it. You know what I'm saying? I
Well, that's probably why he was like that with you.
Yeah, no, I again, something that you don't realize when you're 10 or 11 years old, but I wish that I had internalized his approach doing lessons with me rather than what it was that I felt he was trying to teach me. Because again, when I failed, it was a big, I would internalize it a lot because I felt that sense of responsibility to myself and to my team, and even like again, and to like my parents. I felt like there was a lot riding on this because being exposed to watching big league baseball at a young age, you're like, that's what you want to do. You want to be a big leaguer. You want to play in. I wanted to, it's not even be a big leaguer. I wanted to play in the World Series. Like that's what I wanted to do. So that's what I felt I had to do to get better to help me get to that point. And then I'm playing travel baseball now, and I'm getting around to 12 years old, and the pinnacle of that age group is going to Cooperstown or playing in the Little League World Series, I would say. Didn't get a chance to play in the Williamsport that tournament or anything like that, but we did get a chance to go to Cooperstown when we were 12. And at that point, we had already played, like, I was 11 going to Tennessee and Ohio and those places and playing in tournaments. And I'll never forget, sorry to kind of backtrack a bit, but I'll never forget going to Tennessee and being super, like, I remember being so proud of myself because the first game I faced this kid that had a curveball, and it was the first time I had seen a real curveball in my life that didn't just kind of float. It was like, and I was like, okay. And I struggled. And then we played in either the championship or a playoff game or something like that. And I faced a kid with a curveball again, and I hit a double off him. And I was like, okay, like that was a good job. I was so proud of that. The fact that I was able to get a hit off of a curveball. So that's when oh, shit's getting real. You're starting to see this funky
The game
stuff
changes.
Yeah, man, it changes, and you got to adapt.
What hitting is, suddenly it becomes a lot different.
You lied to me. You said it was just going to be a fastball forever, like you know. But and then you get exposed again. I know I was at Cooperstown, but I'm going to backtrack a bit. But you get exposed to like intense baseball. We're playing at baseball heaven against the New York Outlaws, and these guys are like freaking world beaters, and our team was world beaters too. From a 12-year-old, 11-year-old's perspective, world beaters, whatever the hell that means. But we're playing against the New York Outlaws, and it's feeling like the freaking World Series every time we play each other. Guys are striking dudes out. Like I remember this one kid was throwing absolute, like you could barely see the ball. He was throwing so freaking hard.
What's so cool is that your experience at that age, when you're in an intense environment and you got parents yelling and other kids,
Yeah,
and like it matters that those feelings from like a mental, psychological, emotional standpoint are the same feelings you would feel in the World Series.
yeah, I'm sure. I mean,
Like
I couldn't
what,
tell
like
you.
the sensations and all that. Not
Yeah.
to say that like it's not the same experience, but your nervousness, the
hmm
thrill of it, the letdown, like it's human.
It's the pressure of every situation. Like dude, I can remember remember a a moment in a game where we played against the Outlaws where it was big time, like second and third, 2 outs, our guys up, I'm in the dugout right now, and one of our guys gets picked off at second base, and being like, fuck, like damn, like the pitcher, because the guy was so good. The pitcher was so good, to his credit. It was a guy who went to John Glenn High School, and he was so dialed, and you're like thinking he's just going to strike this guy out. He just lifts, turns around, and picks the guy off. I'm like, oh my God, dude. Like, it was just man, that must have been fun to watch. Like, I mean, I know I know we're talking about 11 and 12-year-olds, but it's just like fiery, intense baseball. Like, we had a kid on our team who would just mash home runs too. And every once in a while he'd get up and launch a ball, and you're like, holy crap, man. But,
12-year-old, like 11, 12-year-old baseball in those smaller fields, when the kids are care about it and they're well coached and like they get some of the fundamentals, like that's like real baseball.
yeah, dude, it is. It is. It is. And it had to be fundamentally sound. Because at that point, I'm playing for a coach who, the guy's intense. He's intense, and that's putting it lightly. And when you're young and you take everything personally, that's what you think it is. But the guy just wanted to win. It was win at, like, the signs were not crazy. If he wanted you to bunt, he'd go like this. But his mentality, and dude, I agree with this to this day. He's like, I don't give a shit if people know what my signs are, because it's about who executes. Like, that's what it's about. It's about who executes the play. And he was right, because they could crash the defense and you could bunt right into the defense. But if the guy throws the ball away, you know, like, there were times where if you had two strikes and he felt like you weren't swinging, he'd tell you to bunt. And I'll tell you what, I've been that guy that had two strikes and had to bunt. I got the bunt down, you
Mm.
know. So it's I at
How
the
do you feel
time.
after that?
I mean, I was like, thank God, thank
Was
God.
it it was a sense of relief?
It was a sense of relief, because he was going to be like, well, that's why you're fucking bunting right now. Like, but
I had a not to interject my own thing, but I had a two strike bunting experience once. I was in college. I was like 21 years old in summer
damn,
ball in that NECBL, and I had to get a bunt down. First pitch was like painted on the corner, so I took it. Okay, fine. Like I was good enough where I was comfortable. And then second pitch was, I don't remember the exact pitch, but I bunted it foul or something. Or maybe it was like really, it was like got up on me and it was a bad call. One of the two pitches was a bad call. One of them was a good take, but like I didn't get the bunt down. And then I look over at coach and just kind of like, no, you're gonna bunt this now. So he gave it to me again. I was like, okay. And this guy, he hung a slider and I bunted the slider and I got it down. I got the first and I was like, yeah, I'm good at bunting.
yeah. I'll tell you what, dude.
But
I was always good at bunting because of playing for that guy. Like, always, always, always good at bunting. And it just, you had to be fundamentally good. We didn't have first and third plays. It was just catch and throw, and you had to be good at it. And you had to be able to play multiple positions, because, as my dad said from a very young age, if you hit, you play. So if you were hitting, you were in the lineup, period. And that was something that I learned at a young age. And this is also, 12U is when I started to catch. So
oh yeah,
I
let's talk about that.
I
Your
never
whole,
knew.
I would have assumed you've been catching already.
Oh, so
So go
yeah.
into that.
So I had played. My favorite player was Derek Jeter. Period. Period. End of sentence. There was nobody else. It was Derek Jeter. Did I like? I like to watch the funkier guys too. Like, I like to watch what the hell was his name? Orlando Cabrera, I believe.
Mm. Yep.
Had that
El
high
Duque,
leg
right?
kick. Yes,
Yeah.
El Duque. El Duque. I loved watching El Duque with the and I would always imitate his freaking leg kick and that slot, dude. I remember throwing a freaking ball against a tree, just trying to get that leg kick down. I wanted to play shortstop, and I wanted to pitch. By the end of it, dude, I hated pitching. But um, so I wanted to play short, but I wasn't great at it. When I was young, I was a much better infielder, but I think that I got a little bit not scared of the ball, but I just didn't feel comfortable in the infield. So I played, and I could run pretty well, and sorry, I should have said this too. I'm from the time I was 4, I used to go and watch my dad play softball. That was another thing that enhanced my love for the game. When I don't know if you've ever been to a men's league softball game, but they do batting practice before, and guys go out and shag. And from the time I was 4, I would go out and shag,
Mm.
and I remember guys being like, oh, freaking little Dwayne's out here. My dad's name's Dwayne too. Oh, little Dwayne's out here, whatever. Like, Paige, is he all right? Is he all right? And my dad's like, he's fine. Just. And I remember tracking and catching these balls, these like monstrous fly balls and stuff. And I just loved it. When you're a kid, you're not really, aware of the danger that you could be in. And I wasn't
Mm.
standing really close. I'd go far out there because I wanted to catch the really high fly balls. I didn't want any part of a freaking screaming baby at me, but I'd go out deep and I'd be catching the fly balls. So my dad knew that I would be comfortable in the outfield, and he was an outfielder from the time he was younger. So he started telling me, like, oh, like, go play the outfield. Like, you really like doing that. I was like, okay, yeah. And I had a good arm too, so I liked throwing the ball really far from the outfield and stuff. So I would play the outfield, and I'd play third base. Um, Hated third base just because there was stuff to think about. I had to charge on a bunt and freaking no. No, didn't want that. I wanted to go play the outfield where it was see fly ball, catch it, throw a rocket in. Like I wanted to throw guys out at the plate. Like at this time now, I'm watching like Paul O'Neill and Bernie Williams and guys like that, and I loved it. But to my catching experience now, it's 12U. We're playing at Baseball Heaven, and the catcher that we had on our team, it's not even that he wasn't very good. He just didn't, you could tell he didn't love the game and he didn't love the catch at all. So something happens in the bullpen where I think he gets like hit in the shin or something, and he's hurt now. And prior to this day, I didn't know this until I was probably 20 years old. But my dad had said to my coach, he's like, because my coach was, I think, complaining about the catcher. He's just not complaining, but saying that he doesn't seem like he loves to catch. So my dad goes, fucking put Dwayne back there. He'll be fine. So that happens in the bullpen. The kid gets hit in the shin without his shin guards on. I think he wound up breaking his shin, actually.
Wow.
My coach at the time, being a early 2000s coach, is kind of just thinks that he's bitching and moaning. So he's like, whatever, Dwayne, go catch. And I'm like, what? He's like, go catch. And I'm like, all right. Super uncomfortable, but thankfully back then everybody wore a cup at all times, because nowadays a kid would be like, I don't have a cup on, but everybody wore a cup, even if you were an outfielder like myself. And because that was really the only fear I ever had, was getting hit in the nuts. But so now I'm catching, and from that moment on, like it was nothing else. It was that I wanted to be a catcher, and now I'm watching Jorge Posada and all those guys, and
So was it you did it and fell in love with it right then?
I
Or
wouldn't
you
even.
just
I was just doing it. I was just doing it. I was like, this is my way to be in the lineup every day. You know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't necessarily like all of a sudden now I'm training as a catcher. It wasn't this is my identity or anything like that. It was all about hitting for me. It was all about hitting and doing. And again, dude, I have to be honest with you. It's like it was really about just doing what was told of you to help the team win. That's what it was. Oh, I'm a catcher now? Okay. You want me to go play the outfield? Okay. Because there's always obviously multiple catchers on the team. So as we get past the 12U range, and now there's another good catcher on the team. And again, I wasn't the best. I was, I caught the ball. I was from a young age, I was a very good blocker. Always. I was always a very good blocker because I was not scared of the ball. And I didn't practice my form or anything like that, but I just knew to get my body on top of the ball and keep it, do whatever the hell I could do to not let that ball go by me. And as I got a little bit older, we got experiences playing on fields with some backstops, like some far backstops, like 20 feet, and then playing at PAL, having like a 35, 40-foot backstop, which is crazy.
that's enormous, that
I know.
place.
It's huge. You've been there, right?
Yeah.
It's massive. And
I love fields like that because it really made a good catcher that much more
yeah,
important.
I was like, yeah, I want people to see shitty catchers miss the ball, and I
Mm.
want when you see me block the ball and the fact that it doesn't get past me, I want you to be like, yeah, that's right.
Did you were you aware of the other catchers on the other teams and like how you were compared to them, or is it just focused on what you guys were?
If they had a rocket arm, yeah, yeah. If the guy was freaking, then I'd be like, okay, that kid's good. But not really. It wasn't like, oh, that kid receives really well or anything. It was if he blocked well or threw well, I would say. Um, but my first real big stage experience was Cooperstown, to get back to what I was talking about earlier. And I'm catching now, and we're playing in this because the reason why I wanted to talk about this tournament is because this is where I really had my first like mental check, because you know what the emphasis is. Every kid or parent or coach that's going to listen to this knows what it's all about when you go to Cooperstown. It's about hitting freaking home runs there, dude.
Mm.
Because it's 200-foot fences, and even the emphasis, which is the first time the emphasis was placed on this for me. We're taking batting practice at Duck Stadium before we go, and I remember my assistant coach, who had some pro ball experience, Nick Fante's father, Nick Fante, one of the goats, nicest dude in the world. He,
Love Nick.
I love Nick and
We'll
his
talk to him
dad.
eventually.
Oh, yeah, he'll definitely be on here.
Nick
That
is
guy's
a professional pitcher. Made it up to I think the double A level. He's been with a couple different organizations. We'll have him on.
Did he play for Team Italy?
He did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he did.
Yeah.
He did play for Team Italy. But Nick's one of my best friends, and he started playing with us when we were 10. And we're taking batting practice at Duck Stadium, and his dad's like, "Oh, you got to think that this is around 200 feet right here. So let's see, like during batting practice." And for whatever reason, I don't know why. I tell this to kids all the time. I changed my batting stance before we went to Cooperstown because I always stood like wide with like some knee bend, and I just like stood more upright, just relaxed, and all of a sudden now the ball was doing this instead of like this.
Mm.
I could not tell you why I decided to do that, but I just felt like stronger and the ball was just flying. And I'm like, okay. So I take a really good round of BP there, and Greg, my head coach, Greg's kind of like, yeah, like you that round you would have had a couple home runs, Dwayne. That's awesome. And I'm like, oh, cool. I wasn't really a home run hitter, dude. I had maybe 4 or 5 home runs in my life up until that point, from little league to then. And so now we go, and that first night, I think I didn't struggle, but I did not have a great game. And something happened where, so I hit a ball off the wall that I thought was going out. I got pissed off about. And then I think my next at bat, I struck out looking. I was pissed. And I will say, dude, one thing about me when I was young is I was hot. Like I was hot-headed. I was a little ragey when I was younger. And I was pissed. My coach knew this about me, right? The kid who's
This
pitching,
is around the age where you saw red at the football game.
this is probably a year after. So a year after this is when that happened. But
I mean, Dwayne told me a story once where he saw red because he got so pissed he threw an interception in middle
yeah.
school football.
Yeah, and I went freaking beast mode and made like the next 3 tackles to stop the other team
Seeing
from
red.
scoring. Literally seeing red. I
I've
was
only seen red once in my life, and it was because I did like a ridiculous amount of heavy squats.
So you were
And
redlining.
yeah, literally. But yours was yours emotionally fueled, which is probably a good metaphor for our differences in a nutshell. But
Yeah,
sorry.
dude.
So
No,
you were
no,
raging.
no, you're good, bro. It's very relevant to what's going on right now. But I'm pissed. Now I have to go catch because I struck out to end the inning. And my pitcher, the kid doesn't know this at the time, but he does not see well. Which there's 2 people in my life that I know that the guys literally couldn't see the seams on the baseball, but they raked. One of them is this guy, Andrew Gazzola, and one of them is Mark. From the time until Mark went to college, he could not see the seams on the baseball, and the guy hit more home runs than I know. His whole life, dude, until he went to college. Anyways, so Andrew's pitching. He can't see my signs. It's a night game. So I signal for breaking ball. I get down to block. It's a fastball and just goes above me and smokes the umpire. So the umpire thinks I did it on purpose because he just rung me up on the at-bat before. It
Oh
was the
shit.
first batter of the game. So he starts saying, now, I didn't know this at the time, but my coach starts making a scene. And my dad thinks that he's yelling at me. Now, again, at the time, when you're taking everything personal, you think you're internalizing it and you're thinking that he's yelling at you.
Mm.
He's trying to keep me from getting ejected from the game because this umpire is all his focus is on this little prick who just let him get hit in the face with a fastball. So my coach is now blowing up just at everything. At everything. The lights, this, that, like going nuts. And he's just taking the heat off me. And I look over because, again, like your coach is screaming. He looks over. He goes, go out to the mound or something like that. That's why, my dad thought that he was yelling at me. But again, I'm telling you, and I know this for a fact. I know this guy very well still to this day. I know why he did that now. And I got to say, probably one of the smartest moves I've ever seen. Because if you get ejected, you're gone for like another game or two.
Mm.
And I think I was the only catcher there. So he just tells me to, because he was trying to get me away from the umpire. So I go out to the mound. I'm talking to Drew, and he's like, He's like, yo, what's going on? I was like, I have no idea, man. I think Greg's pissed right now, whatever. So then I just go back and I'm like, oh, you good to the umpire? He's like, looks at me weird because again, he thinks that I did that intentionally. And then I'm like, yeah, he crossed me up, and he's like, oh, he's like, all right, man, like let's just get going, whatever. So I then tell Greg talks to us after, and he's like, "What's going on?" And Andrew's like, "I can't even see his signs." So then I get exposed to the idea of doing touch signs,
Mm.
So a couple lessons learned that day. But my mental check was kind of like I put so much pressure on myself that first night to hit a home run and whatever. So I talked to my dad after, and we're staying in the barracks and stuff. And I talked to my dad, and he's like, "Man," he's like, "just have fun." And I actually saw Keith Osick that night too. We're just hanging out, we're walking around the barracks because Keith's team's down there too, or up there. And Keith's like, man, just like enjoy yourself. This is like such a great place to be. And same thing, Greg's like, he's like, you just gotta have fun. He's like, hitting is so much easier when you're having fun, doesn't it? He's like, doesn't it feel good when you're up there and you just freaking you're staring down the pitcher and you got a little bit of nervousness or whatever. He's like, that stuff's gotta feel good, man. You don't get to feel like that all the time. And I was like, yeah, you're right. And I went on to go on a tear that tournament. I hit like 10 home runs.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I went on an absolute tear in Cooperstown. I was raking, and against good teams too. Like we played the team that we wound up losing to in the championship, this team called Team Rawlings Elite in California, and out of California. And I think one of their pitchers either wound up being in like AAA or the big leagues, but the guy they threw against us in the championship, who he did really well against us, I'll say. He wasn't there for the first game, but we played in such an intense pool play game the first time. You knew it was a good team, and I wound up hitting a solo home run to put us ahead that was a wall scraper, if I'm being honest with you. The pitch was like 3 inches off the plate outside, and I just flicked it over the right field wall. But that's just like how I was feeling. Sometimes you're just seeing it really well, and I was just riding it, man. Like I blasted a couple balls for sure, but there was definitely a couple balls that were just like line drives that went over. And then the last thing I want to talk about that tournament is playing in that championship game, because we go from playing in a semifinal game where we won like 23-1, and I think I hit 3 home runs in that game, and now all of a sudden we're getting to the championship game, dude. And for anybody that's ever seen a championship game at Cooperstown or seen pictures or whatever, there's like, I don't want to put a number on it, but I'll say it's probably over like 1,000 people are sitting
I
like
would
in
have said
this,
like 2,500.
something like that, dude. There's
Yeah.
so many people at that game, and dude, like you feel like you're about to shit your heart out because like it's like it's crazy.
Yeah.
And before the game, both teams like jog around the field, and you're like high fiving all the fans sitting around and stuff. It was insane, dude. It was a really nice experience. But then get back to the dugout, and you're watching this kid who is throwing fuzz now, and his curveball's like, and you're like, wow, holy shit. And I think all of us struck out. I think the first inning, because we had such a loaded team, like guys like Steve Foster and Matt
Mm.
Annunziata and Cepeda, like really guys that obviously, but some
Steve
people,
Foster hit like 300 in the Cape,
dude,
which
he's
is, yeah, that's
he's
no
legit.
accident.
He's
Yeah.
legit, man. But this kid's like mowing us down, and we're like, holy shit! My first at bat, I strike out to him, um, and Cepeda was pitching, and he's, the guy's a gamer. If you were to have me grab one of my guys out of my career right now, have him roll out of bed and try to win a baseball game, it would be him, because that guy's just tough as nails. The guy pitched a regional tournament game with a torn MCL. He threw 6 1/3 innings, and I think either won or lost by like a run, something like that. But like that guy's just tough as nails. One of my very good friends, and he's getting hit a little bit, and it was kind of it was surprising. But I did wind up getting a hit or two that game, but we lost like 14-7. They rolled us. But feeling like that after that loss, and I forget the name of the gentleman who spoke with us, the guy who like runs the tournament or one of the families, whatever. this guy comes over and he's talking to us, and he said to us, he's like men cry, boys don't. He's like, this kind of an experience playing at this stage, you should be proud of something like that. To get to this level, you guys, he's like, I watched you guys play this whole week or whatever. You guys are a really good team, you a bunch of really good boys, that kind of stuff. He's like, I want you to be proud of this experience and stuff. And again, me, I'm like, fuck that. I'm pissed. We lost. I don't want to hear that shit. But the
Get
the
this guy out
this
of here.
not even that, because I was everything but disrespectful. I will say I was everything but disrespectful, but it was like, dude, we just fucking lost. Like, I don't want to hear this right now. But as you get older, you realize if you go all out for something in your life, that's what you should be proud of. The fact that you went for it. Not necessarily pending on the result. You should be proud of the fact that you really went balls to the wall for it. And that is something that I struggled with my entire career, because it was always based on, like I've been saying, on the win. We needed to win. And if we didn't win, I'm pissed. It could be I did really well and we lost. I'm pissed. I did really well and we won. Happy-ish. Okay, but what's next? It was always about, all right, what's next? What's next? What's next? I struggled so heavily with the process and being proud of my process, because it was always about winning the bigger game, winning the next game, winning the big game. You know, as I get further into travel baseball, it's like, okay, we just won this tournament. Who's next? Where are we going next? Who we beating next? That's always what it was. So I wish that in that moment I could have had that maturity to understand what that guy was saying, because that is something that I would struggle with for my entire baseball career, and I believe that it was one of the hindrances to me getting to certain levels of baseball. More travel baseball after Cooperstown, and it's the same thing. I'm playing like over 100 games a summer on three different teams, where I'm going from Ohio playing in the Cincy Flames tournament to going to the NABF World Series in Michigan, coming back to freaking New Jersey for a tournament, coming home for a local tournament, catching like 3 games a day, 6 games a weekend. It is
Who's fueling this at this point? Is this your parents
it's me.
saying, yeah,
It's me. I wanna go. I wanna go. I wanna play. I wanna travel. I wanted to do all that stuff. And not even I don't even know, man. It was just, what the hell else am I gonna do? This is what I want. There's a big leaguers doing, or freaking traveling around the country and playing all the time. Like, and I was never thinking, oh, I'm tired after a couple games. It was just, all right, I'm catching today, let's go. Okay, I'm playing left field, I'm playing right field, I'm playing. I get to the NABF World Series over in Michigan, and my coach Greg, he's like, you're hitting pretty well. Frankie's gonna catch this game. You got to play first. I've never played first base in my life. I was shitting my pants. We're playing like this team. I think it's called like the Toronto Mets or something like that. This team's legit, and I'm playing first base. The first inning, a fucking laser gets hit to me, and I just block the ball, get up, and step on first base. And I'll tell you what, dude, blocking a one hopping line drive without gear on sucks. But that's how I felt I needed to get to the ball. So that was my strategy. Um, but this is what I need to do. This is what I have to do, and I'll do whatever it takes to win. And at this time, I'm starting to feel faster, because I played football from the time I was in 6th grade to 8th grade, or 5th grade to 8th grade, something like that. So I learned how to run a little bit better. Um, I was a very intense player. But I was never, especially in the travel baseball circuit, on a couple of the teams that I played on, I was definitely one of the better players. But when I was playing on the really good tournament team, I was like a lower guy. I was not the guy that was banging home runs and stuff. I was a guy who could bunt, who could walk, who could get a couple singles, hit a double here and there, run the
Dwayne, when you were
bases.
in on this 8-year-old team, that initial travel team, and then eventually going to Cooperstown and doing all this, what's your standing? What's your experience like as a leader, um, as a teammate? Like, how are you perceived by your teammates? What's your perception of yourself at that point?
Um, it's actually interesting. I should have touched on a couple of those things, so I appreciate you asking that. I was somebody who loved my teammates, was just friends. I was a good I was a good vocal mouthpiece on the field, meaning I would communicate the base that guys should be thrown to. Again, I didn't start catching until I was 12, but I always knew my responsibility. I knew the responsibilities of my teammates. We were always really good friends, but it was never a conscious decision to be a leader. There was maybe one or two times, and it was actually an in-house baseball where the travel kids were all split up in-house. You couldn't have more than I think two travel kids on one team, and I always got put on the worst team, which was bullshit because I was the only travel kid on my team. I was on the A's, man, which is why I have like a small love
Is
for
that on
that.
purpose for the?
I have a small love for that organization, for the Athletics, because I was always on the A's. And listen, man, I have an Oakland Athletics hat because I just have a love for that team because of my in-house experience. But my mom,
That's hilarious that the
my
in-house
mom
A's were.
was a time where my mom was so proud of me was because there was this kid who had such, and you know what? I'll even take it a step further. There was a kid who was older than me, and I watched him do this. I watched him be such a nice kid to one of the kids that were not so good at baseball, and he aged out the next year. I watched him like take this kid under his wing. Dude was and he was a big, strong dude. Like not tall, but kid was like jacked for an 11, 12-year old, something like that, or a 10, 11-year old, whatever it was. And he was so nice. The next year he was gone. His name's Jake. He was gone. He aged out. And I did the same thing for another kid the following year. I took a couple of the kids under my wing, and that's something that I think my mom was the most proud of me for when I was a kid, was listening to the other mothers talk to her about how I was with their sons, because I had been playing baseball since I was shitting in my pants and knew the ins and outs of the game. And like my mom will tell that story to this day, talking about how I was with some of the other kids on those teams. And it's something that I am very proud of. But in the travel baseball world, to kind of transition that over, it was like a sense of responsibility to your teammates. You know, it was doing your job because you did not want to let your teammates down. And I learned that really from the PAL Rangers when I was 14, you know, playing for John Zattern, God rest his soul. He was a guy who made me fall in love with the catching position. He was a guy that, you know, man, he I had a really good relationship with John. You know, he was a big fan of Thurman Munson. My dad's favorite player was Thurman Munson. My dad's favorite number was 15. John's was 15. Mine's was 15 as well because of my dad. And John uh like had a good connection with me because of that number and the position. And me and my really good Francisco Almanzar were the catchers on that team. And John, that was when I was really exposed to catching training. Have you ever heard of the Florida State drill? Like where you're doing the lunging, you do like side lunges along the like what's it called? The track.
The warning track?
Yeah. Where you're doing like it's
Uh,
like a conditioning thing. He
I
called
mean, I've seen similar things. Not that one in particular.
That's what he called it. But that was our conditioning a lot of the time, and it sucked, especially after doing a lot of blocking drills and stuff. But it was always on blocking, communication, and throwing. Again, no emphasis on receiving, our favorite thing. But John made me fall in love with the catching position, and he was the one who had you embody what it meant to be a teammate, what it meant to be not even a leader, but just to be a good teammate. And if you're a good teammate and you're vocal, you're a leader. Like that's kind of what it became. Um, but that's where I really was starting
Yeah,
to be.
I think at that age, leadership's like a byproduct
Yes,
of
I I just
just being good.
I felt through him, and again, it was like college baseball when you were 14, though. Your parents drop you off at the PAL complex. You go in vans, you drive to Maine, you play a tournament. You stay in a hotel with three other kids. This is the experience. This is college baseball experience right there. You know,
Hmm.
you're driving up to a place, you're staying in a hotel room with a couple of your friends. You're usually rooming with the other catcher and maybe like a pitcher or something like that. You don't know that because you're 14. You don't know what college baseball is, but like looking back, like that was essentially what it was. So, dude, that was some of the best baseball experience of my life. Period. Was doing that stuff, dude. I loved it, and he made me like, oh man, I freaking miss that guy so much. I still to this like to the till he passed. Him and I would have conversations about those days, and it was so good to kind of sit in the PAL clubhouse and talk to him about those kinds of things. And it was a fun time, man. But that's where I really started to learn about like the brotherhood of this stuff. I always, like I said before, I always had a really good relationship with my teammates. They were always my best friends. You know, I was the kid who was going to school, and my best friends were not in. I had a couple friends that I went to the same schools with, middle school, high school with, but my best friends are my travel baseball teammates because I spent so much time with them over the summer. Like I said, I played freaking 100+ games a summer probably, and I do not think that that's an exaggeration. Um, but after playing for the Rangers, because it's only 14U, and then you're 15 years old and you're the alumni of something, and you're going back to like alumni baseball games as a 15 and 16-year-old, and that's when I started to get a pride in ownership of something that you were a part of, which as a really young guy, it's such an interesting feeling that you feel, you're seeing these guys wearing the Ranger stuff, and you got your old Ranger, because the only thing that you keep is your vest, because your vest, like the vest uniform, has your
Mm.
name on the back, and you wear that over to the alumni game, and it was such a cool experience, dude. So, and also being at Connecticut like living there and going to high school there, a lot of pride in the baseball there. So from a young age to high school baseball, you start to really get a sense of like ownership and pride, and it fed right in to what my value was as a baseball player, was win at all costs, man. Win at all costs for the team, for your boys. There was no better feeling than watching my team celebrate after like a big win or a walk off. It was always about them, dude. Like I wanted to be good. Like I said in the beginning, I wanted to be a big leaguer and play in the World Series, but what I really fell in love with as I got a little bit older was watching my teammates just go freaking bonkers after a win, or like the dugout going nuts after a big hit, or a pitcher, you're catching, or I'm catching now, and your guy strikes him out, and it's like, yeah, let's go. Like that was the best feeling in the world for me. Um, and then travel baseball is super fun. I have a I have what was it? I had a conversation with one of my travel coaches around the age of 16, where I was more or less, I was like telling him that I didn't feel like his team should be my primary team, because I just felt like I didn't belong. And I think it was like a skill assessment, you know what I mean? I felt like the kids were, for whether it was because they were or because I felt that's what the coach's perception was, I felt as though they were better than me. So I asked if I can make one of, like, I think he had two teams, and the second team was coached by Petrucci, and I
Well,
felt as
how old is this?
this is 16 after my sophomore year in high school. And around that age, I said, I think that should be my primary team. And he's like, yeah, but I'd love, because that coach was a really good coach to me. Like Greg was a really good coach to me, and loved me. So he wanted me around, but I just felt as though I can't say I wasn't getting exposure, because that wasn't my concern or anything like that. I wanted to catch, and I wanted to make sure I was catching and in the lineup because I wanted to play. But he was like, listen, you come to tournaments with me, He's like, in league play, whatever, you're going to play here for Lou, and that's your team, whatever. And dude, what a good decision, because I got like so much more baseball that summer, because that's when I started to really, I'm going from here to there and traveling all over the place. My parents have three younger kids, so I'm literally going out by myself. I'm staying with my friends' parents and going to this tournament, and then I'm going over and playing with Greg in this other tournament. And to be honest with you, like I had that conversation with Greg, and then I'm going to that, like I described to you, that NABF World Series, and now I'm playing first, and I'm playing left, and I'm catching. So it was such a good decision by me, because now not only was I, playing for a team that's, in my opinion, a higher level than what I was, than my ability said, but now I'm playing in these games because I'm available and I want to
Mm.
play, and I'm fundamentally a good player. I don't have power, I'm not hitting home runs or anything crazy like that, but I'm fundamentally a pretty good player. And then I'm going and playing for Lou, where I'm, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 hitter, and I'm catching all the time too, which is like you kind of asked before, is that where my focus is? Like now it is. Now around the ages between ninth grade to 10th grade and 11th grade, that's what I want to be. I want to be a catcher now. So, and and like, because middle school was still like, am I going to catch? Because I was 12. I think it was sixth grade. I started catching. And then now it's, okay, I make the middle school team as a seventh grader, but I'm playing the outfield because they have a catcher that's a year older than me. But I was one of the best hitters on my middle school team, so I'm playing right field now. And then in eighth grade, I catch because that's what I wanted to do. So I'm like, when I make it to the high school teams, am I gonna still catch? So I'm trying to figure out ways to get myself better at catching. Ninth grade happens when I'm able to play for the PAL Rangers, and that's when I really like decide I'm a catcher. So ninth grade I catch. 10th I get a little bit of time on JV. I played for the freshman team, but I get a little bit of time on JV, and then I go back to the freshman team. We finish that out. 10th grade comes. I catch the whole season, and I have a really good year. Like, I have a really good 10th grade year, and I'm like, you know what? I'm actually pretty fucking good at this, I think. I can catch. I'm one of the best blockers that I see. And now I'm starting to pay attention to the receiving stuff because of Saturn, and just because that starts to become a little bit more of a trend in catching, is receiving is emphasized. It was more so just catch the ball prior to that, but now it's like you're trying to like move it a little bit. Like, I'm not thinking like quarter turn or anything like that, or like momentum or loading my glove. The load was kind of like here, and just kind of try to stick it where you're like in and just creating a little bit of momentum. Thankfully, Coach Ambrosini's son was a minor league catcher, and he was around a good amount when I was younger, and he would come and coach the catchers sometimes, and these are kind of some of the things that he would talk about with us. So I'm getting some now from Saturn and from Ambrosini's son. I'm getting some catching training, but I had never thought to myself to seek out a catching coach. Funny, because I went to Keith Osick, who was a catcher, but I didn't think to go and do catching lessons or
I mean,
anything
why
like.
would you? No one was.
No, you're right. You're right, 100%. But it's just funny because it's like those things were in front of you the whole time. But um, so that's after that 10th grade year. I'm like, you know what? I'm pretty fucking good at this. I need to make sure that I'm catching, and that's why I had that conversation with Greg, because I wanted to make sure that I was catching, because he had gone and acquired some other catchers, and they were good, like straight up. Like, I was aware enough to say, this kid has figured out, they had better arms than me. They threw better than me behind the plate. I had not figured out at this point how to throw effectively from the catching position, because when I threw from the outfield, I had a longer arm, and I had a very good arm from the outfield. But when I caught, I would get stuck in here and kind of just like, I did not have a very good arm from behind the plate. I'd throw guys out because I was quick, but I realized after that it was my quickness and trying to get rid of the ball quickly, which was kind of hurting me.
Yeah, it's super common.
Yes, I know, dude. I was talking about that with one of my catchers last night, and it was, dude, you're 6'5" or 6'4" or whatever. Throw like a 6'4" guy, not like a 5'5" guy. You don't need to be super quick. You throw the ball 83 miles an hour from behind the plate or some shit like that. Like, you're fine. So I have that conversation with Greg. I catch a lot more, and I still get to go to those tournaments and play other positions, which is great because it's high stress, high intensity baseball. I'm freaking away all summer. I got the gross farmer's tan. I'm never going to the beach. Got no social life except for with my teammates. Wouldn't sacrifice it for the freaking world. And I'm loving it, dude. I'm so happy and so proud of myself. And I get to play for Petrucci. I got to play for this guy, Dennis Buckstein, who is a good friend of mine. Probably have Dennis Jr. on at some point, a very good friend of mine. And I'm loving it, dude. I really am. And then we get to varsity baseball. And this is where my dad is right again. You hit, you play. And I'm like, I'm a catcher, whatever. They have a senior catcher when I'm a junior. And again, the guy's got a rocket arm. But I know that I'm a better receiver. I know that I'm a better blocker than him. That's what my perception is at the time. The coach, again, likes the rocket arm. At that point in baseball world, you throw well, you catch. You need to have a cannon. That's just how it was. And me, I haven't leveled up my arm yet. My throwing ability has not received enough skill points for me to throw well from behind the plate. So I'm playing left field and I'm DHing my junior year. I'm batting fourth too, which is awesome. I'd never batted fourth in my life, but I was and I wasn't a home run hitter, but I was a guy who had a good amount of RBIs. And the year prior, I was brought up as a sophomore when we won the county championship and lost in the LIC to, damn, I can't remember the name of the freaking high school, but whatever. We lose in the LIC, so we see what the expectation is, and we know we have a good team coming back. In my junior year now, I'm the four hitter. We're playing really well and stuff. We go to the losers bracket in the playoffs, and it is, you know how it is that at that level. You go to the losers bracket, you're pretty much cooked. And we lost like the first game, and then we win out, make it all the way to the county championship, only to face, you know who in the county championship, Anthony Kay, guy who plays in the big leagues, and now he's over in Japan, right?
Yeah, he's pitching in Japan.
He's over in Japan,
Making more money than most big leaguers.
Yeah, making millions of dollars over in Japan to pitch now. And dude, what a cool experience to play in the county championship against a future big leaguer. And if you would have told me at that moment he was going to be a big leaguer, I would have believed it because that's just how he carried himself and that's how he pitched.
Yeah.
But that was so freaking fun. That was such a fun year. And then, my senior year, I go on to catch. That summer, going from my junior to and I'm starting to take more of like a leadership role, and I think I was able to. I learned the mouthpiece part of that from Ambrosini, and from my coaches at Connecticut, from Berger, from Ambrosini, from Frank Stabe, because those guys were just typical. Like they wanted that intensity. They kind of demanded that intensity from their players. So you had to match that energy with your voice. So that's where that started to come in for me too. Is you can't be afraid to talk, because I think naturally I was a pretty shy kid. Like I was somebody who was a little bit more introverted, even though like we had said earlier, from a time I was very young, I was talking and talking and talking and talking. But I think at that stage it was just kind of like, I'm just going to play. I'm just going to play. I'm just going to compete and win and compete and win. And I wasn't thinking too much about the talking aspect. But I think the coaches over at Connecticut really helped me develop that skill to talk and talk loud. So I think that was a lot of fun. But then senior year comes, summer going from junior to senior year. Now it's all about trying to get recruited to play college baseball. And I'm like, I don't even know what the hell that means. I don't even know what that means. Very disappointing loss coming off the county championship. Oh, let's get back there next year type of feeling and win it. But, we lost some good players that year to just graduating high school. I say lost some players. That sounds so intense. They just graduated high school. It wasn't that serious. But going into that summer, I talked to my high school coach about, a couple of colleges I wanted to play in. I talked to Greg, my travel coach. I talked to Dennis, my other travel coach, and Lou. I was trying to figure out what the hell's going on. They made calls to some schools to come watch me. And I had a stressful summer, I'd say, that year, because you didn't know what the hell to do. I had
Mm.
no idea. I was the first in my family. I was the oldest in my family. Nobody had played college athletics, I think, other than maybe one of my uncles played college lacrosse. We didn't know what the hell that looked like. So, and me not being, I was a good student in a sense that I got good grades, but I did not love school, so I didn't even know what the heck I wanted to study. Um, and I'm talking now to Greg, and my dream was I wanted to go to Navy, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go to Navy and play baseball there, and then come out and be a naval officer. So I'm talking to Greg, and listen, man, you can say what you want about what he's about to say to me, but this was a good thing to say at the time. I go to Greg, and I remember we were at a tournament where I text him. I'm like, hey, like, can we just talk? I want to figure out where I'm gonna go to school or whatever. So he's like, yeah, come up to my hotel room, whatever. My buddy, Greg's son, Jeff, one of my best friends, he's in there too. So I go up. Jeff and Greg are in there. Greg, I sit down. I'm chatting with Greg, and so where do you want to go? And I go, I want to go to Navy, man. Like, that's where I want to go, and I want to play ball. He goes, you can't go to Navy. Guys who go to Navy fucking mash. And I was just like, I was like, fuck. All right. Oh man. So he's like, listen. He's like, you're a good player, but he's like, I don't see you as being a guy that goes to Navy and plays. All right. And I was like, okay. All right. So what do you think? He's like, coach so and so from New Haven, or coach here's from this school, whatever. I got good relationships with those guys. I can get those guys to come down and watch you play. He's like, but he's like, at the end of the day, he's like, you just got to play. He's like, you just got to play good baseball, and that's it. He's like, the rest of it will just work out. And I'm like, okay, sounds good. So I have a couple coaches come and watch me play. One day I'm at a position, I don't feel so comfortable. I'm playing third again for the first time in like 5 years. I'm pissed.
Actually, hold on, let's go back. Can you, uh, I didn't realize that you had an interest in the Navy or other armed forces type uh, career aspirations at that time. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so I mean, I come from a family of law enforcement and
Because I
military.
guess what uh, based on what you've said in their story thus far, you're so far in baseball and this and that to then just be like Navy, it can
Yeah,
seem a little
it's
bit,
different. It's different. Yeah,
right?
you're right. So for me, it was like my dad was always big for me on having a fallback plan. He was he believed that I could achieve my goal of making it to the major leagues. That's what I wanted to do. I just wanted to play baseball. Um, but he was also always big on having some sort of a safety net in the form of a plan, which I think was very smart. Um, I naturally, that looks like law enforcement or military career when you are surrounded by those kinds of people, which I was. My mom's side of the family was all military. My dad's side of the family had some law enforcement in it. So that's really my only two options in my mind, right? And you don't think about baseball and military service, but then when you see that these, Navy and Army and Air Force, there's teams like that out there, or colleges like that have sports, now it's like, oh crap, I could, go and play college baseball and then, have a career afterwards if, and if you're really good, maybe you get drafted out of one of those schools. So that's what my thought process is. But I have that conversation. So I that's what my plan is in the short term. And I look into the process. You need to get like some sort of, I think, your governor to sign
Yep.
off on you. Yeah. So you got to get like the governor to sign off on you going, and so I look into that. I talked to Zadern about that a little bit, my coach from the Rangers, and we try to figure out what the heck I have to do for that. And but then I have that conversation with Greg, and he very bluntly just says like, "Dude, you can't play there." And I'm like, "Okay, noted," because the overall goal is to play college baseball now. That's what my focus is, because I have that realization in 10th grade. I'm pretty good at this. I could do this. And then that's when the goal changed to play college baseball. Like, for shorter term goal was to play college baseball, because that's what good baseball players do. They play in college, and then if they're really good, they play pro. So that's what my goal is. So now the military thing's kind of out the window, because I'm like, shit, I can't play at Navy. And
Also, the thing you're really falling in love with to date is winning, being with your teammates, and
mhm.
playing in meaningful games.
Yes.
Which, if you want to play at a really high level, especially in college, a lot of times, unless you can go play at the LSU or the Vanderbilt or one of those schools, you're gonna have to choose, like, do I want to play with a team in a lesser conference or at a lesser level that's good, or do I want to play at a higher level against better players but potentially on a lesser team?
Yeah. Yeah, that's no, 100%. I mean, that's not necessarily what my thought process is. It's just I want to play, and I want to play for a program that it's kind of what you said. It's I want to play, and I want to play on a team that's going to be competitive and playing like high pressure situations, so to speak. Not for exposure, just because winning is fun and playing in championship games, which is what I'm accustomed to. It's what my teams did in travel baseball, and it's what my teams did in high school baseball. We won, and we played in high pressure games. And when I watched, especially in 2012, when I watched Connecticut, because I got pulled up to be like a bench guy and a bullpen catcher, when I watched us win on a walk-off home run for the Suffolk County Championship game, I was like, holy shit, there is nothing more crazy and better feeling than that right there. It was, you could feel the freaking electricity in that moment. It was insane. Um, so I was, freaking just chasing that feeling, dude. Um, so get to that conversation with Greg, come to that realization, probably not good enough to play at Navy. Um, and that's the first conversation where I start to get on the path to big league baseball is not in my future as a player. That's one of the first it's not the first moment where I'm kind of like, because if you remember, I had that conversation with Greg a year or two prior where I was like, hey, dude, like, I don't feel like this should be my primary team. And that's one of the moments where I realized there's a lot of players that are a lot better than me. Um, so I knew, again, not thinking it's outside the realm of possibility, but I'm thinking to myself, there's a lot of players that are better than me, and not. I'm not. Listen, if you threw those kids on the field against me as a player, I'm going to do everything I can to try to beat them. I might be successful in that on that day, I might not, but I'm not sitting there scared, and I'm not sitting there as somebody that is thinking that I'm going to lose. I'm sitting there thinking I'm going to win until the last out is recorded. That's just the kind of player that I was. But I'm starting to come to those realizations that I'm not I'm not that guy. I'm not that guy. So we get into that. We're now in the crux of that summer, and couple schools here, couple schools there. Again, I don't know what the hell I want to study. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what's going on. And now we're playing. We played at Dowling College a lot. We played there a lot from the time I was probably 14 to this point when I'm 16, 17. And I have a really good game for Greg's team. We're playing against this, other travel team, and I have a really good game for Greg's team. And this player at the time at Dowling was just there, like site directing or whatever. And he might have been there because Greg reached out to Dowling, because Greg went to Dowling and was a successful player there, and knew Tommy Caputo well. I don't know why he was there, but he had reached out to Tommy and talked about me and a couple of my teammates about that we played well, and that Tommy should come down and watch us play. So then I don't remember how I got into contact with him personally, but I had started talking to Cap and talking to him about, possibly playing ball there, just giving him my schedule, honestly, so he can come down and watch me. The first time Cap comes down and watches me play, now I'm playing on my primary travel team against Greg's team. And he's pitching, his guys, because college coaches are down there to watch. And I sucked. I absolutely sucked that day. Like, I think I struck out twice and I flew out to like center field or something like that. Caught pretty well. It was a pretty good game too. And I remember Cap comes down and talks to me, and he still remembers this, but he comes down and talks to me after the game, and I'm like disappointed in myself because I didn't play well. Because you're thinking, you need to have two doubles, and like you had
Hmm.
talked about last week, you need to play really well in front of the guy that comes down and watches you play. But I'm just kind of like just listening to him and listening to him as he's talking to me in the back of my mind. I'm like, damn, I really fucked it. This sucks. And then whatever, I go home and I text him because he's like, hey, let me know when you're playing next or whatever. And I text him, I was like, sorry, I suck today or some shit like that. And then he told me when I wound up actually going there, and one of my first weeks of practice is he's like, you're the only player that's ever texted me sorry for sucking or some shit like
I think it's
that.
the only time I've ever heard that.
Yeah. I texted him though and I said, sorry I suck today or some shit. But
Now, was that like a fairly typical commonplace thing? Like, is that something you would normally do, or was that like a one-off?
I mean, not no, I'd never talked to any college coaches like that really. It was just, I was really only talking to him like that. Like I was only really in steady contact with him and working through my coaches or email with other college coaches and basically going off of this guy likes
Sorry,
you.
that's just such a funny
I
thing.
know.
Like,
This guy likes you. There's a chance you can go here. This guy, he
sorry, I
doesn't.
suck today.
Yeah, I know. I know, dude. It's But to my surprise at the time, now he's coming down to watch me play like sorry. He's coming down to watch me play like 5 or 6 times now. And I'm having a pretty good game here, pretty good game there, not so good game here, not so good game there. And I'm like, dude, I'm not really doing anything crazy. I had been playing well. It was like it reminded me when you were talking about before that coach came down and watched you play, how you were raking. It wasn't like that, but I was playing really well and hitting well. And then I feel like he freaking comes down and watched me play, and all of a sudden I'm just playing very average baseball. Um, so then to my surprise, he's like, Dwayne, would love to have you on campus or whatever, like to talk about, you possibly coming here and shit. And I'm like, what? So I'm kind of, surprised now, but I'm super pumped because I'm going to get the chance to play college baseball now. That's what I'm thinking. So I tell Greg, I tell Petrucci, I tell, my travel coaches, this is what's going on, man. Like, I'm going to go over to Dowling. They're like, oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Are you excited? I'm like, yeah, I'm so excited, whatever. I tell my parents about it. We go over to the campus in Oakdale, and we sit in Cap's office, and it's a common thing for me that sometimes I'm very skeptical of things when it comes to making decisions or having to go somewhere, do something. I can definitely be skeptical. But when I sat down in his office and we talked for, however long we talked, and we went around, we looked at the campuses, all that stuff. By the end of the conversation, I was like, I don't want to go anywhere else. This is where I want to go. But it was because of the conversation that he had with me and my parents and my dad. I get my skepticism from my dad for sure. My dad's always like, oh, maybe I might. No, this is where I need to go. This is where I need to go. This is who I want to play for. I want to play for this guy. This is somebody who holds a high standard for himself, for his team. This is a championship winning program. This is everything that, again, I'm not thinking about it like this. I just said, I listened to this guy talk. He said all the right things. This program's good and wins. I want to go and play here. But what I'm realizing now is that it was everything that I enjoyed about the game. You know, good culture, team camaraderie, a figurehead that's a strong figurehead and is a man of his word, and those kinds of things, and winning. So I'm in my mind, I've decided that this is where I'm going to go. And he said, take your time, all that stuff, whatever. Let me know. Also, you understand you're not going away. You're going to be commuting because I live fairly close. And I'm like, okay. But like I said, I left his office and I said to myself that this is where I'm going to be, for the next 4 years. This is where I want to go. So, I call him maybe a couple of days later and I tell him that this is where I want to go. I want to commit here, those kinds of things. He's excited. I'm pumped. My mom and dad are really pumped. And it feels good, man, because I'm going to be a college baseball player. And I think Cap said something along those lines, but it's like when people talk about you graduating college, and it's something that some people can never take away from you. The fact that you got to that level. And it was just such a surreal moment for me. And I felt confident that I was going to some place that I would be developed and cared for. And I felt like I was in the plan for, again, not even like in the plan in a sense that I'm going to start. Because it wasn't about starting, it was just about playing and my playing helping the team win. I wanted to do everything I could to help the team win. I understood because I was going there and they had a senior catcher and a junior catcher, a guy we talked about on here before, Michael Rizzatello, one of my good friends, and wound up working with him for a couple of years too. But I played college ball with Mike for 2 years, and he was such a good freaking mentor to me, which I will get into in a little bit. But now, I've accomplished that short-term goal of becoming a college baseball player, and I think that gave me a real sense of confidence and allowed me to kind of step into my leadership a little bit more and make me, because that kind of gave me some validation that, like, hey, you're doing some things right, which when you're a young man, it could be very easy to feel like you're doing a lot of shit wrong. So I finished up playing high school baseball with it's a very average senior year. I played pretty well. I didn't, make some crazy accolades or anything like that. I had a decent senior year. And we get eliminated by Comac on a Derek Jeter-like throw from Jesse Berardi, who wound up playing in the minor leagues for a couple of years. The kid was a stud. And we lose, but, very similarly to you, it's not my God, it's last time playing. It's, most of me and my boys are going on to play college baseball. I'm going on to play college baseball. Like, this isn't the end of the road for me just yet.
Yeah. Dwayne, let's take a break. Okay, so you made your college decision and you wrapped up high school. It seems like an uneventful senior season. And so now we're summer before college and then heading into the whole college experience.
Yeah, and that summer season was fun. It was pressure-free baseball. I mean, my approach is now a little bit more with physical running, because I heard stories from Mike about the intensity of the exercises that were being done at Dowling, which I would be exposed to in a couple months. And but other than that, the baseball was very pressure free. Playing for Dennis Buckstein Sr. and playing with that group of guys was so fun, and that was probably one of my favorite summers of baseball. And I was very grateful, up until that point, going into college baseball, having played for so many good guys, from that first travel coach that I talked about to Greg, to Petrucci, Fanti, Zatter, and then high school baseball, having the coaches over there too. It was such a good experience for me to get all guys that cared for me and all guys that had different approaches to coaching honestly. Like it was such I think it benefits me right now as a coach so much, getting to see the different styles and approaches that they took to coaching, and what they all had in common was their ability to help guys have a good experience and help guys win ball games, which was, again, something you're not super aware of at the time, but looking back on, was so grateful for my experience, honestly. And yeah, I made sure to do my rounds on expressing my gratitude to those guys for my experiences. And Zattern and Ambrosini, who have since passed, I was grateful to have some conversations with them prior to playing with them, and express that gratitude to them, because even with Ambro and with Zattern, being able to express to them my gratitude and how it's, shaped me as a coach as well, which has been cool. And then to go back and coach with some of those guys, which I'll get to in the future, but it's been a blessing for me. So, I finish up that. Oh, do you have something?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
I finish up that summer. It's super fun. Say goodbye to some friends that are going off to schools in some other places. Have a couple of last rounds of BP. That's one thing about Coach Greg is he threw, probably still to this day, threw the best batting practice I've ever received. The dude really could throw some good batting practice. And he did a couple of hitting practices with us before we went off to school, and it was good to hit with those guys and wish them all luck as we all kind of go our separate ways, which is such a strange experience. Me and Dennis Jr. were both going to Dowling together, which was so cool to get to play college baseball with a very good friend of yours. And Cepeda was going to Dowling as well. So, guys that I've talked about here are going there as well. And then I made some other friends along the way there too. Going there with Rizzatello, who I had played underneath at Connecticut as well. So it was, most of the guys are going to be new. The coaching staff's going to be new, but you got a couple familiar faces that you're going to be seeing there, which was a good feeling. So step on the first day of practice, and I'm gonna talk to Tommy about this when we have him on, but we didn't touch a baseball for like the first 2 weeks. We were just getting absolutely smoked, and I'm like, what the fuck did I get myself into? Something about the Dowling campus that I feel like people should know is there was no elevators that functioned in their Oakdale campus, so it was like an old Vanderbilt mansion. What it is, but it's just not a college anymore, which I'll get to in a little bit. But I had a class on the third floor, and after the first day of practice, it's plate pushes and rope exercises and lunging squats with weights on your back and a plyometric station and what's it called, a running station. So it's just, you're getting absolutely smoked. It's a smoke fest. And stadium runs, because we did have stadium seating there, thankfully. That was so fun. But that first day of class after practice, I was walking up the stairs to the third floor, and I shit you not, I was going up one step at a time with both feet. Like, I literally could barely lift my legs. It was so bad. But I'll tell you what, dude, that experience just changed my life as an athlete, because now it was more than just being a good baseball player. That shit like bonded you, which I had seen in the past in the form of adversity. I'd seen adversity and losing bond teammates, but now I'd seen, like, I guess shared suffering as a way of bonding with your teammates as well, and saying to yourself, I'm not going to quit because this guy next to me is still going. I'm not going to quit because I want to, not even because I wanted to be the best at it, but because this guy's freaking going through some shit too. Like, I'm not going to quit. And that fired me up, and it made me want to not just get through those workouts, because at first you're like, I just want to survive this, but then next you want to be a guy leading the pack. We do that, and then we get into some baseball activities, and you know, now we're starting to get into baseball activities. We don't have a catching coach. So I'm working with Danny Parisi, a senior catcher, Michael Rizzatello, a junior catcher, and it's me. And me being somebody who is an older sibling, and even a guy who has assumed some leadership roles previously through travel baseball, in-house, and high school baseball, I had not been used to being mentored in an intentional way. Like, you get mentored in residual ways playing for coaches because they're teaching you lessons, although they're not directly trying to help massage you into a leader or anything like that. They're just there to coach you because that's what their job is. But, Danny and Mike had really taken it upon themselves. And dude, like, it's just a testament to the kind of people that they are. Like, they just did it. It wasn't Cap saying, Danny, Mike, coach him up. Like, they just did it. Catchers, go do your thing. Outfielders, we're with this coach. Infielders with me. Like, and then catchers, go do your thing. And when you're called to catch bullpens, you go do that. When you got to catch live or hit, whatever, you do that, or run first and thirds, those kinds of things. But Danny and Mike are now, like my older brothers, and they're teaching me receiving stuff. And Danny was so good about teaching the receiving stuff, and I think and being a freshman, essentially bullpen catcher that first year, between Danny and Mike and having to catch so many damn bullpens, that's when I really got much, much better at receiving. And I was getting good feedback from my pitchers, and not that I was seeking it. I wasn't going over there asking. They were just kind of giving me some feedback on how I was receiving them and stuff. Really helped boost my confidence there. And my first scout day, which, for some of our listeners, college baseball programs, a lot of times, depending on where you go, the level, Division 1, 2, or 3. I don't know if Division 3 schools do scout days. I didn't do one over at New Paltz, but at Dowling, for the 2 years that I was there, we had scout days in the fall. And that first scout day, dude, I came up throwing freaking bullets to second base. And I remember Cap saying to me, like, that he was impressed with the way I was throwing the ball, which was the first time that I'd really received that kind of feedback as a catcher throwing. So I could see that Danny was helping me and Mike was helping me a lot, and that I was getting a lot. Like, me going from a high school baseball player to a college baseball player, I can't even begin to say how much better I got, dude, as just a player all around. And I have to tip my cap and give props to the coaching staff there and to my teammates. I also was proactive with it too. Andrew Larson, which was one of the assistant coaches there at the time, my freshman year ran a long toss program for the pitchers, and I asked him if I could get involved with it just to help strengthen my arm, and he allowed me to do so, and I took part in the pitchers throwing progression. I think most of the position players wound up getting over and doing that too, but I was definitely a guy that sought that out myself, because I know I wanted to freaking throw dudes out all the time. It was like I was addicted to throwing piss missiles now to second base. That's all I wanted to do. So especially, that being the Achilles heel of my catching up until that point. Guys would say, Dwayne is one of the best blockers, receives really well, it's just throwing's a little you got to make sure you have a guy on the mound that's quick to the plate, because sometimes, the ball doesn't have much juice on it. But then you watch me throw from the outfield, and I could throw from track to second base, no problem, track to third base on like a hop or two. So I didn't make that connection, and nobody else really made that connection. And then I kind of just, through working with Danny and the staff there, it was good. But again, I don't play much my freshman year. I don't really play at all. I got maybe 10 at bats and maybe like 6 innings behind the plate, something like that. But in some cool ways, man. I got, my first RBI, I think like my first at bat, and I don't even remember what the hell. I think my first hit was like a bloop single or some shit. And I remember getting to first base, and Larson was like, he's like, listen, man, got the first one out of the way or some shit like that. And it was a fun experience. And again, like the camaraderie, it was like, it was a dream to get to play for that program. And that second year, I definitely got a lot more burn, and had a situation where Mike was now the senior catcher. We got a transfer catcher who, at first you're now threatened because you're a young man now and your ego's like, oh, this is gonna be, I'm
Yeah.
supposed to be that guy or whatever, and I'm pissed. And
You
Cap
think you're in
says,
line and then
yep.
someone else shows up.
And Cap says this too. Because I remember when he first got Russo on campus, he saw that I looked like I was pissed. Because I was like, fuck, man, like this guy's a threat now. And then me and the guy Chris Russo, who was the catcher that they were bringing in from Iona, became like best friends. Like literally, like. So then it was my sophomore year. It was me, him, and Mike. Were like the three jackasses, just catchers, just having such a good time. But unfortunately, early on in the season, Mike goes down with a back injury. Chris goes down. I forgot what the heck happened to him, but he gets an injury, and now I'm the only catcher left. And I'm like, oh, shit. So, in your mind, you're like, you know what? Chris is better than me. Mike is a senior, and he's better than me. I'm good, but you know what? Like, these guys they're just better than me. Like, again, having another mature realization where I'm talking to Cap, I'm like, listen, dude, if I can hit, like, I could play other positions too. Like, get me some reps at first base. Or can I wasn't demanding. Can I get some reps at first base? Can I get some reps in the outfield? Whatever. Just trying to find ways to get in the lineup. But then, like, shortly after that conversation, how the world works, how life works. Sometimes you get exactly what you're asking for. So, they both go down, and now I'm the guy. I'm the only guy, and we're not doing well at this point in the season. We're like 3-11 or some shit like that. Not playing well. We go down to Cary for our like
And this
away.
program had been good. This like
Yes.
3-11 wasn't
No. No. I mean,
commonplace.
you know as well as I do, shit like that happens early in the season sometimes, but it was uncharacteristic losses against teams. Like I remember we lost to Nyack, and that's not a very strong program, and we lost to them in a pretty bad way. I actually played that game too, and it was around the time that Chris went down. And now I'm like, I gotta freaking do something. I gotta play well. And I go on like a really good tear. I think for a week I hit like 750, some like crazy shit like that. I played really well. I won like conference player of the week and stuff, and I was super pumped. Funny story actually, I'll share. We were down. This is just goes to what I tell so many players about is to anticipate playing every two stories. First one's funny, second one's really a lesson. So we this is why I tell players all the time to be ready for your opportunities and anticipate opportunities and never count yourself out, because those moments are going to come when you least expect them. And also to be aware of the situation. So I get a start. Or I either got start or I got inserted into the game. We're down in Cary. Chris gets hurt. And I'm like, all right, now I'm it. So I get in the game, catch, inning ends, we get back in the dugout, and I'm up third this inning. First guy gets out on one pitch. Second guy gets out on one pitch. I'm not aware of any of this because I'm just fucking like, oh shit, like here we go, here we go, here we go. And I get I step out of the box, I look over at Cap. He gives me this, or this something to this extent, which is a take sign. But I'm thinking he's like, let's go or whatever. First pitch is fucking middle, and what do? I swing at it, and I smoke it in the left center field gap. The center fielder makes a really nice play. I'm feeling good. I was like, I barreled that. I feel good. I jog off the field. I'm going to throw my gear on. Danny Parisi, who was the senior catcher the previous year, is now the catching coach. He's one of the assistant coaches this year. He's like, do you know what you just did or whatever? And I'm like, no. He's like, yeah, dude, I know. Like, I smoked that, whatever. I'm getting my gear on, whatever, and I just freaking go out. And the way Danny tells it is Cap comes in the dugout. He's like, did you talk to Dwayne or whatever? And Danny's like, he doesn't even give a shit. He doesn't even care what he just did or whatever. I just had no idea what he was I was just pumped that I freaking got in and barreled the ball up. So then I come back into the dugout, and Cap like kind of grabs my chest protector. He's like, are you fucking serious right now, dude? Like, what's going on? Like, and I'm like, what do you mean, dude? And he's like, the first two guys got out on one pitch, and then what did you do? And I was like, oh yeah. I was like, what do you? I was like,
And you
I
missed a
don't.
sign.
Yeah, I know. And he's like, I gave you the take sign. I was like, dude, I'm so sorry. I thought you were like telling me like, let's go and like pumping me up or something like that. And then he just starts hysterically laughing, and he's like, get out of here, dude. Just don't make that kind of a mistake again. But to hear the story from Danny's perspective was the funniest because I come off the field and I'm just like happy, throwing my shit on. He's like, "Do you know what you just did?" And then Cap comes over and he's like, "He doesn't even give a shit. He doesn't even care what he just did or anything like that." And I'm just oblivious to the whole freaking thing. But whatever. We go on. We play okay down there, and we come back. And I have that week where I won the conference player of the week. I'm playing really well. We start to turn things around. We start to play well. Chris comes back, Mike comes back, and then I kind of get put back on the bench, which, in retrospect, that's what happens. Those are your guys that are projected to play well. They need to kind of get back into the swing of things. No pun intended. So now I just kind of check out. I'm like, fuck, dude. Like, I could not have played any better. I don't know what I could have done better. And this is the first time in my life where I'm now kind of like, I feel like I was owed something. You know what I'm saying? Like, I had never really, I've done a pretty good job of being aware of my surroundings, being able to say, like, this guy's better than me, like, this guy needs that, whatever. And being a team guy, because I've been a team guy my whole life. But this is the first time in my life where I kind of was like, what the fuck, dude? Like, why am I not in the lineup? Which I'm sure everybody can relate to. So I'm kind of pissed, and I check out a little bit, which is something that this is uncharacteristic of me. Because now I kind of just think, you know what? I don't think that Cap has it out for me. I don't think that the coaching staff doesn't like me or anything like that. I just think, all right, this is just how they see things going, and I check out. And what do you think happens after I check out? I get a start in a conference game against Queens College, and I fucking suck. I absolutely suck in that game. And then rightfully so, like, and after that game, I was like, now I deserve to be on the bench. You know what I mean? And I got some time here and there for the rest of the season. But I now tell kids all the time, it's not about, you have to really focus on what you can control. I could have, we were still not in the middle of conference play at the time when I had came out of the lineup after having that good week. And in retrospect, too, I was beating up some non-conference teams, which, yeah, there were some good teams. There were some not so good teams. And if those two guys are guys that are supposed to be impact players, they need to get at-bats prior to being into heavy conference baseball. So they needed to get those guys back in the lineup. When you're a 20-year-old kid, though, you don't have that perspective, or 19-year-old kid, whatever I was at the time, you don't really have that perspective. You're just like, I need to be on the field and be helping the team win. That's what I wanted to do. But now that I had that whole moment of just looking like a clown for checking out like that, I had learned a really valuable lesson. So that was a real wake-up moment for me. And at this point now, too, it's not that I'm seeing the whole major league thing be completely out of the picture, but it's more or less like I'm not starting as a sophomore. I'm playing at a Division II school. It's not many guys are going from Division II baseball to the big leagues, let alone being a guy who's like a tertiary catcher going from that situation to the big leagues. I'm kind of like, I don't know about this. Dowling ends up closing for financial reasons. We're coming home from the regional tournament in, where was it? Franklin Pierce. After we won the conference tournament in a very sick way. It was a very cool game. There's a sick video of my buddy Rob Costanzo making a sliding play and throwing the guy out at first, and then we dogpile, which again, just feeds to that whole experience to me, which, dude, I that's one of my favorite days of my life right there is us winning that conference tournament. Again, after being in the losers bracket, come on our home field too, coming back and winning it, very much like we just did this last year with St. Joe's. Shout out St. Joe's. We're now riding a new high. Then we go up to Franklin Pierce, and we lose, and now we're on the way home, and we get a call, and Cap tells us while we're on the bus headed home after losing that the school is closing, and that was the last season of Dowling ever.
Oh man.
Yeah,
So that's how that all. Because we had a similar experience at Buffalo. They closed down not the school, the baseball program and a few other sports. We had found out in the last during conference play. So it was in like April-ish, if I remember correctly.
yeah.
But we knew we were finishing out the season, but like we knew. But so you guys found out. So he probably knew and didn't tell you.
I don't know that for a fact. I don't know that for a fact. I don't know.
But
I would,
well, either way, so you guys found out.
yeah.
So you lose in the conference tournament. You're like, oh my God. And then you get hit with this.
We win the conference tournament, we lose in the regional,
Oh,
and
okay.
now you're good.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of like, damn. So like at this point though, dude, there's probably, let's say, 40 guys on the roster. It's like it's 40 guys that it's not like a typical college or high school or travel baseball team. It's 40 guys that are like so tight, such a tight group of guys, which is a testament to Tommy and how he does such a good job of recruiting and developing guys, because those guys were my brothers, and I that was a serious dagger for me. Um, I had a little bit of an inclination that Dowling was going to close because I studied history in college, and we I was notified by the history department that their entire program was going to be online the next year. So I was like, that's a little bit of a red flag. And I told my parents about it. My parents were like, listen, dude, we're not paying for you to go to school like online when we're paying for you to be in class, so to speak. So I go to Caputo and I talked to him about that, and he said, it might be smart for you to look into some other programs to see if, either you can take some online credits and be here, or just go to another school altogether, because academics comes first and stuff. And he talks to me about, there's life after baseball, which, you don't want to hear as a young man, but it's reality. And I don't know this for a fact, but I think at the time of us having that conversation, he kind of knew that the school was headed in a really bad direction. Having conversations with him now, because I still have a relationship with him now. He's the head coach over at St. Joe's, and I work with him. But it sounds like he had an idea that that would be kind of the last season. Again, I don't know this for a fact because he hasn't said that explicitly, but that's the impression that I gather. So I had done some research into some other schools, and my sister was going to New Paltz, and a couple of my friends that I'd played college summer ball with, my team over the summer we played in the Boys of Summer Collegiate Baseball League, which is nothing special, but it was fun. And I was coaching now already because I started coaching. Tommy Caputo inspired me to become a coach, so I started coaching with the Ducks my first
How did
year.
you, yeah, talk about that.
Yeah,
Starting
so
to coach while still playing.
we in the winter would help out with the Ducks indoor workouts, the junior Ducks, and Cap inspired us to do that and work summer camps too for the Long Island Junior Ducks. And after the first winter workouts, I was like, dude, I kind of really like this. Sitting in a cage, my college coach is right there doing the same thing I'm doing. It's cool. I got my teammates over here doing the same thing I'm doing. We're coaching. It's cool. And I learned that I had an aptitude for it. So I asked him after the winter sessions my freshman year. I said, is there an opportunity for me to coach a travel baseball team this summer? And he paired me with none other than Danny Parisi, my mentor, senior
Mm.
catcher over at Dowling, and I was Danny's assistant for that summer. And after that summer, there was a what's it called? I don't know if I probably was not as proactive as I should have been. And I don't think I contacted the Ducks and let them know that I was interested in doing it again. So they gave Danny a new assistant. And, me being a 19-year-old kid, I kind of took that personally. So instead of reaching out to the Ducks and being like, hey, dude, what the heck? Why didn't you put me with Danny again? I instead was like, you know what? I just won't coach for the Ducks anymore. I'll reach out to the Titans, an organization that I played for. And I reached out to Downey and I told him, hey, did you got any opportunities for me to coach for a team this summer or whatever? And he said he'd give me my own team, which I was, surprised but super super excited about. And
Hmm.
so after my sophomore year of college baseball, I had my first summer of head coaching experience as a travel baseball coach, which was it was fun, man. It was really fun. It was weird in a sense that you're the head coach, and but I had some things I'll never forget. Is very parallel to the kind of feeling of confidence that I had playing my first year of travel baseball for that coach that I described earlier. I had this one kid on my team. His kid's name was Mikey, and he was overweight, and he was terrified of a couple things. Number one, stealing a base, and number two, going to second base on a double. It's the kid's first year on the big fields, which, can feel like you're running a mile the first couple times. And he was a good hitter. Like, the kid hit the crap out of the ball. But, I'm sure you've seen it or heard of it, and people listening to this have seen this before. That first year on the big fields, they'll pinch the outfielders, and if you hit a ball hard enough to an outfielder, you can get thrown out at first base. And Mikey would get thrown out from, he would get thrown out from the outfield sometimes after hitting laser beams, dude. Laser beams. And I kept telling him, I said, listen, dude, I don't even care. I don't care if you get thrown out at first base, because in a year, that's a hit. In a year, that's a hit.
Hmm.
There's no doubt in my mind. Whether you get faster or not, in a year or two, that's going to be a hit. So just keep doing your thing, dude. Keep doing your thing. Keep doing your thing. Proud of you. Love it. And I told him, I guarantee you're going to hit a double by the end of the summer. And we were playing, I think, on the Kings Park JV baseball field, and he hit his first double on the big fields, and that was a moment that I'll never forget as a coach. It was one of my favorite moments ever, dude, is he smokes this ball in the left center field gap, and I'm like, this is it right here. This is it right here. And my buddy who I coached with at the time, my buddy Chris, my roommate, he was my assistant coach that summer. He was coaching first base, wheeling him. I told him, I was like, dude, if it's getting to it, just send him, because he's gonna hit a double. And he's standing on second base, pumped up, dude. I'll never forget that moment. That was one of my favorite moments. I think those are it was one of those moments that was like, you're doing this for the right reason, and you're doing the right thing for sure. So that's, my coaching experience up until that point was travel baseball as an assistant coach, 1 year as a head coach, 1 year, and realizing that, it's something that I really enjoy and that I value. Not something that I'm saying to myself, I'm going to make a little bit of a career out of post-college, but it's something that I gravitate towards and that I enjoy. And again, like I described throughout this episode, I have had very strong coach figures in my life, guys that are legends in their own right, guys that have been doing it a long time, guys that freaking love the game, love to coach, and just overall love the kids that they get to coach. So all of them, every single one of them, enjoyed doing what they were doing, enjoyed the kids that they coached, and just loved the game and loved to win. So, and I had been exposed at this point to, as much as those guys were great coaches, I had been exposed to going to college baseball, and the things that I focused on or fixated on as a player individually, when I got to college baseball, I'm like, oh my God, a lot of that shit didn't even matter. So I'm thinking to myself, having 2 years of coaching experience, I say, there are a lot of good things that were emphasized to me, especially being a fundamentally sound baseball player, especially being a good hitter, the importance of being able to do things like bunt or situationally hit, or just be situationally aware of what's going on. Those are all things that every coach of mine really emphasized in such a good way. But there are some things that I fixated on as a player that when I got to college baseball, I realized were not necessarily of much importance or did not really need much attention, because you get to college baseball and then you're like, oh my God, this is what I should have been focusing on my entire life, not this or that, the other thing, whatever it is. So my mentality is, if I can get this information to travel baseball players, to younger baseball players, it'll help them get to that county championship walk-off that I experienced, that college baseball conference championship win that I experienced. That's what I wanted these kids to experience. I wanted them to get what they wanted out of the game, because that's what I got out of the game. Not even what they wanted, what they needed, which you might laugh at because we talk about that stuff all the time.
Yep.
But that's what it really was to me. It wasn't about playing in the. It really wasn't about playing in the major leagues. It really wasn't about playing in the World Series. It was about winning with my teammates, which either meant winning a championship game or getting through a really tough workout or bonding over some sort of experience on or off the baseball field. Guys that, I may have talked about this in a previous episode, but I'm getting invitations to weddings from some of these teammates from 13 to 14 to 8U travel baseball guys that I've known my whole life, and I'm going to their weddings now, and I'm having phone conversations talking about work, this, that, and the other thing, and we're still talking about these kinds of memories. That's the stuff that I wanted these guys to have. I knew I could provide that in the short term for my travel baseball teams, provide them a quality experience and bring them closer to a team. A lot of times I'd say to these teams in the beginning of the summer, like, listen, I got you for 3.5 months or so, and I'm going to do my best to bring you guys together and help you guys have a quality experience and make you better baseball players in the process. The result is you're going to become better. But the process is learning how to treat each other the right way, giving yourself a sense of responsibility to yourself and to your teammates, and that's the process. And if we win baseball games along the way, that's great, But that's my coaching experience up until that point. That's the realization that I'm starting to come to, and I obviously, like I sort of started to talk about, was I had those really good teammates from my college summer team while I'm coaching and playing in a local college summer league, and half the team is my friends from Dowling, and the other half is my friends' teammates from New Paltz, and then there's a couple other guys sprinkled in there. Like one of our shortstop was from Brown University, stud, did not belong on that team. One of our guys was a kid who played at Albany, stud, did not belong on the team. We had Rizzatello on that team. We had a couple guys from St. Rose. So our team was sick. Like, our team was so good and would just beat the crap out of, like, most of the teams there. But then we had another team or two in the league that was good and would be such fun freaking games. And then every championship in that league was against, that other good team, and we won on some cool. So really good college summer baseball experiences and really good summer coaching experiences those first 2 years. But because of the relationships I formed with the kids from New Paltz, it was an easy, idea for me to say, like, listen, it's got a good history department. My sister's going there. One of my childhood best friends goes there, and I got a lot of buddies now from New Paltz, and I had visited New Paltz as a freshman, so I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to freaking go to New Paltz. So my grandfather, who was a Korean War veteran, he loved talking about his experiences in the Navy as a corpsman, and his two sons were both Marines, and my dad also was a big History Channel connoisseur, so I'd be sitting and watching as much baseball as I did. I watched a lot of History Channel, especially in the off season, and I was fascinated with things like American history and European history and Asian history. So, I loved learning about those kinds of things, those kinds of cultures, and just listening to people tell stories. I loved listening to people tell stories. That's really what history is. It's like the art of effective storytelling. So studying history, it wasn't necessarily with the goal of becoming a history teacher. It was just that's what I had a passion for, was baseball and studying history. There was a part of me that it was interested in maybe studying criminal justice because, again, I had some law enforcement in my family, and it was a potential career option for me. But history was really what I was interested in studying. So I, chose to go that route. And then, when it was time to choose another school, I decided to go to New Paltz, which is a really good decision. because I had such a quality experience there with a lot of guys. My first year there, we made the conference tournament. It was a hard transition in a sense that academically it was much more challenging for me, being somebody who you're living at home, you're doing everything normally that you would do, so then you're thinking to do your schoolwork and this and that and work out and stuff. But now you go away, you're living by yourself, it's kind of on you to do all of these things on time. So I suffered a little bit academically my first semester, not to the point where I was really failing courses or that I was, dipping below a certain GPA that made me ineligible. Nothing like that at all, but just, I was typically, let's say, in a range between like a 3.2 to 3.6 student, and I think my first semester at New Paltz, my GPA was like a 2.6. So it was a significant hit on my GPA, and I was kind of a wake-up call for me. But what I will say is I had such good history professors. Such good history professors. They saw where I was coming from. They saw that I was going through some transition in my life. They saw that I was, not only a transfer student, but somebody who had an interest and an aptitude, but also was a college athlete. It was going through some things. So they did such a good job of just being like, not coming down on me super hard, not being like, hey, you need to do your work or anything like that. It was more so like, hey, when we're in class and you're talking about the things that we're talking about on the subject matter or whatever, you crush it. But you don't hand in your freaking work on time, dude. You don't, you miss a homework assignment. That's why your grade's going down. It's not because you're not good at this. It's because sometimes you just straight up don't do your work on time. So that's when I learned the value of just simply, getting work done on time. And I know it sounds stupid or simple, but I tell kids this all the time, when you go away to college and you're a college athlete, it's really just about doing the work. It's not necessarily about doing everything 100% correct or 100% well. It's just about doing it sometimes. And there's a lot of work to do and just setting aside some time to get that work done. So I learned that very quickly, thankfully. And again, a credit to those professors, the history department over at New Paltz. Those people were fantastic for me. And I had really good academic advisors when I went up there too. So I was very grateful for those people. But we roll around into the spring and, I had some adversity. But what I will say is the adversity came in some weird ways. It was, I went to New Paltz, and the coach was this guy, Matt Ryder, who I think is the head coach at Stevenson University right now. Really good guy. And I was confident getting over there because I knew that he was a guy that my friends from, knowing them previously and the new guys that I was meeting knew that he was a guy that my friends respected very well. So I felt very confident going there. Now, was he similar to Tom Caputo? No. He was very different than Tom Caputo. And when I had my fitness test when I went to New Paltz, at this point I'm 20 and I'm in the best shape of my life. Like my second year of the circuits at Dowling, I was leading the pack now. I was one of the better guys physically, condition-wise. I was one of the best conditioned guys on the team. There was a couple guys who were some absolute freaks. Like Dennis Buckstein Jr. was the type of guy that would show up for practice and be running miles, and then we would go and do all that shit. Like, he was just crazy, dude. He transformed himself, and I'd love to have him on and talk about that a little bit, because he went from a guy that threw like 78 to a guy that threw 90 and was absolutely jacked out of his mind. So those are the kinds of guys we went from there. And then I go over to New Paltz, and I'm like, the guys are getting ready, one of the first practices, to do their first fitness test in the fall of 2016. And Coach Ryder goes to me and he's like, hey, some guys still have to throw. Can you give it over to the bullpen and just catch some of those guys, get to know them, whatever. And I'm like, you guys are lining up to take your fitness test. Like, I didn't say this to him, but I'm like, dude, I don't want to skip out on the fitness test, especially if it's difficult, because I want to, gain the respect of my teammates. I don't want to be like, oh, here's this new guy, he's a transfer and he's projected to start or whatever. This guy's a dick. I wanted, and I would say around half of the team knew me, but the other half, I wanted to make sure that they respected me. I wasn't going to skip out on some sort of running or shit that we had to do. And he's like. So I say, hey, coach, like, if it's all right with you, I'd like to do the fitness test first, and then I'll go catch the bullpens. And he's like, okay. So he has me go first. I line up at home plate, and he has me run to first base, and then he goes, "All right, you're good." And I'm like, "What?" So that was the fitness test or whatever, and then I go and catch my bullpen. So the only reason why I tell that story is just to say the physical standard was a hell of a lot different going to New Paltz from Dowling, because Dowling you were expected to be like freaking Navy SEAL type workout shit. We're doing beach runs every Friday at like 6 o'clock in the morning, and all these circuits and stuff, and these lifting competitions and everything. That's the culture. So that's the first thing that I pick up on, is I say, hey, listen, to myself, this is a program that they're very proud of the fact that they beat Cortland last year in a 2 out of 3 series. Cool. We didn't make the conference tournament the previous year. We didn't make the conference tournament the previous year. We hadn't made the conference tournament in a little while. So I'm like, the physical standard needs to be higher. And Cap used to say to us all the time, I don't know if this is going to help you win baseball games, but I believe it does. So I say to myself, the physical standard of this baseball program needs to be higher. So I start talking amongst my peers and stuff and saying that, like, hey, listen, and I'm a new guy too. I'm kind of like, coming in hot, surprise, but I'm coming in hot. I'm like, listen, we need to be in the gym more consistently. We need to be doing this more consistently. We should be in the cage before and after practice, getting extra reps. Like I'm taking the stuff that I learned over at Dowling and I'm bringing it over. This is all conscious too. I'm taking the leadership things that I learned from Danny and Mike and even Chris Russo and Cap and Larson and Cap's brother, Mike Valiendo, all those guys over at Dowling, and Joe Candela and Tyler Badamo and and Baman, like all these guys, all these coaches and leaders over at Dowling, and now I'm bringing it over to New Paltz, because I'm like, you know what, I see such a good group, because again, I've played with some of these guys for college summer ball. They're good baseball players, and I'm like, there's no reason why we can't be in a conference tournament. There's no reason why we can't win a conference championship. So I'm starting to try to kind of turn the page for us a little bit. I'm starting to help us, in my mind, I'm trying to just help us move the standard a little bit there at New Paltz, just to help us become a better baseball program. And guys are, there's guys gravitating toward it. Yeah, is there probably some guys that were either my age or older that rolled their eyes at it? Sure. But I honestly didn't give a shit if they didn't want to start to change. And they'd talk about, and again, like, could this be seen as a little bit of a dick move? Yeah. But they'd talk about how they beat Cortland the previous year 2 out of 3, and I'd say, I don't give a shit. I don't care. I don't care. Stop talking about it. I had actually said to a couple guys, I don't like, stop talking about the fact that you beat Cortland. I don't care. And this is the difference between me as a player and me as a coach, is that the intensity and the, I guess I had some, I don't know, I just had a little bit of tenacity as a player. And not to say that I don't have that as a coach, but there's a time and place when you're a coach. And when I was a player, it was freaking all gas and no brakes all the time. So that's what the conversation started to be. So at the end of the fall, though, Coach Matt Reiter decides to take a job at Vassar College, which is a private school just across the bridge over in Poughkeepsie, and it's a better move for him. And the guys are devastated. Me personally, I'm like, you know what? I already went through a fucking crazy thing in having to leave my program with Cap and all those other coaches I just named and my brothers over at Dowling. I'm like, dude, like, I can't believe this shit's happening to me again. I'm not as emotional as these other guys who had spent a couple of years with Ryder. And again, the dude was a super, super guy, like just a very good dude. He pitched in the Detroit Tigers organization for a couple of years, so he was a stud. And he was a good coach too, or he is a good coach, I should say. But me, I'm kind of like, all right, what's next, dude? What's next? What do we got to do? So now we actually find a way to get, and this is such a credit to some of the leadership at that program, not myself, but some of the other guys that I was teammates with, where they made sure that we were, and I got involved with this process too, even being a new guy. We wanted to be involved with the hiring process of the new coach. And I swear to God, it was like press conferences where the whole team, it was optional, but like the whole team would show up, and this guy is sitting in front of us and answering questions to the players and talking to the players about what he's going to do. Yeah, dude, it was cool. And he's answering
How
our
did
questions.
that all get set up?
I have no idea. to be honest,
That
because
I don't. That doesn't really happen.
no, it doesn't. But I mean, listen,
Or if it
administration.
does, it's one private conversations and like, hey, talk to him, and then it's
Yeah,
very hush
listen,
hush.
I don't know if that's how things. I mean, I know that that's not how things typically go, but that's the experience I got. This is what happened. We had, I think, 4 or 5 candidates that we went in and into like a conference room, and we're sitting in chairs laid out for us, and we're talking to this coach. Now, most of the time he was sitting there and kind of telling us what his plan would be for the program, and we would decide prior. We had like meetings with leaders on the team, and we voted on who would be representing the program. The players did, and I happened to be one of the guys that got voted as one of the, I guess, leaders of the team, or a guy that would be somebody that asked questions or whatever. And so, really stepping into leadership roles at this point. Being having some coaching experience. Really being molded into a leader at Dowling by the staff and players there. And now, again, like I said, I took it as an opportunity to put the stuff into practice. And so now that's kind of what's happening. And we meet with this guy, Coach Arlen Freeman. And again, there were some good guys that came in and interviewed for the position, but Coach Freeman seemed like a guy where his baseball knowledge was good, but it was more or less the idea that he was willing to work with us, not just tell us, if that makes sense. So we liked him a lot. He ends up getting the job as the interim head coach, which I think is like a year and a half or 2 season contract, something like that. And now it's go time. And he comes in. He's got, never forget this, he's got a binder of shit for every single player. And it's like a PowerPoint. We're sitting in this conference room, and he's like a PowerPoint going. And he spells New Paltz wrong on the first freaking meeting with the players. And I'm like, we never let him live that down. Now, again, I want to say this first and foremost, like, we loved Freeman. Loved him. Me personally, loved him, because he is a guy where if something didn't go right at practice, if you didn't like something he was doing, his door was his door was always open for a conversation with a player after the fact, in a respectful manner, of course. But that was something I really admired about him. Not to the point where he seemed like a pushover, but to the point where he seemed like a respectable man. And so we start off our season, things are going pretty well. We're winning some games. We decide to have like a vote on captains. I get named one of the 3 captains. So now, I had gained the respect of my peers, which is something that I wanted. I felt ready for a leadership role. I was told going into New Paltz that I would more than likely be one of the starting catchers, if not the starting catcher. But now, that's what's happening, is I'm starting most games. I should say the first game of the season, we're playing the number 10 ranked team in the country, Randolph-Macon, and we wound up beating them like 10-0 or 10-1. So it was a freaking absolute high. And I'm saying to myself, like, let's go, dude. Guys are buying in. Physically, we're setting such a higher standard. Baseball skill, work-wise, we're setting such a higher standard for this program. We're headed in the right direction. This is sick. We wind up making the playoffs, and unfortunately, there was like a nor'easter type storm coming in. They wound up banging the entire conference tournament, canceling it completely, and just giving the conference championship to the number 1 seed Oswego that year. And Cortland winds up, of course, getting an at-large bid into the regional. So I'm pissed. I'm so pissed because, again, like, as well as I do, dude, all you got to do is get into the dance and anything can happen. So I'm like, dude, like, we were feeling so good that year about everything. And then that happens and we're like, shit. And it came down to the wire too. Like, I think we had to win 2 out of 3 games in the last tournament, or in the last conference series, or at least 1 game. And we did, and we punched our ticket. So it was an emotional week and a half. I was actually talking to one of my coworkers yesterday about the fact that I was so sick too for like 2 weeks. I had like pneumonia, and I had like a nasal infection and bronchitis, and I was so sick going through those like last two series, three series. So it was just for me, it was like an emotional freaking roller coaster. But there was nothing that we could do because it was an administrative decision. You know, I go through another really quality summer baseball coaching experience with a guy where at first I was kind of out on because I got a call from Downey and he's like, "Hey, listen, your assistant coach this summer is going to be this guy. His son is on your team." So immediately my eyes start to roll because now I'm going to be coaching with a guy whose son's on the team. But he's like, "Dwayne, when I tell you that this guy, when I tell you that this guy is a quality dude, he used to coach with Jimmy Farrell, who was a very prominent baseball coach on Long Island, and he's legit." And I have a good conversation with this guy John. His name's John Byrne. I call him JB. He he's my assistant coach, and he winds up being such a good mentor for me that summer. Like he just not stuff that you shouldn't let bother you as a coach. Having conversations with parents are now not a big deal for me anymore because it's not the end of the world. And the worst thing they could do is freaking tell you you suck at coaching and go play for another organization, another team, or whatever. So I really learned a lot from John that summer, and we had a lot of fun. That team was good. We won some tournaments, won a lot of baseball games, and I'm starting to say to myself like, all right, I think I'm pretty good at this. And we get to my senior year. I deal with a little bit of adversity in the form of I'm ego lifting and kind of hurt my back to the point of having some serious back spasms. So I'm out for 2 weeks, and but again, in a full time like leadership role. The team respects me. I'm kind of worried that I'm worried about my back for the season. I have a decent senior season as a college baseball player, but we've talked about this in the past. I think the goal for me as a player was to play well enough to garner some sort of a tryout or attention from an independent baseball league so I can play professional independent baseball. That's what my goal is now for my senior year. Major league affiliate baseball is kind of out of the picture because I'm playing Division III baseball. I've accepted that up until this point already. I don't know what I'm going to do post-college. I don't know what the hell's going on. I know that I really enjoy coaching, but you don't really see a career for that. So I'm thinking to myself, you know what? I'm going to play some indie ball, get some pro experience, and maybe that'll help me as a coach somewhere down the line. Maybe, I get noticed and can get some affiliate attention, whatever that may be. So I know my catching skill is there. But my hitting skill, I don't have the power numbers to really garner the kind of professional attention that I was hoping for. So my senior year starts out, it's going all right. Again, I'm catching very well, but I'm not hitting the way that I want to be hitting, and I'm getting frustrated, very frustrated. And this is where it has kind of changed for me now because instead of just focusing on winning, yes, is that always there? But the pressure of me trying to perform offensively has really starting to take its toll on me. And I now am starting to say to myself, like, my window is starting to shut. My window is closing. My opportunities are becoming few to get into professional baseball. And I'm starting to feel anxious about these kinds of things. So I am just overwhelmed with pressure to perform offensively. And I can remember exactly what I did when I had this realization because I'm not even really having fun. We're playing pretty well, probably like 500-ish baseball. It's good enough where I could see us getting into the conference tournament. But again, like I said, I had not started to really look past because I really wanted to win a conference tournament at New Paltz. But I had started to be frustrated because I'm like, this is going to be fucking it for me unless I start figuring something out. And so I take a day. I don't take like a day off or anything, but I take a day where after practice, or maybe we had a morning practice on a Saturday. I go home to I was living off campus in a house. I clean out my car. I clean up my room. I just clean up my freaking life. That's exactly what I did. I needed some little victories. And I was conscious of this. I was like, this is what I have to do. Organize some things, get my shit together, and sure enough, some success followed. I wish I could say that, that it took some other things or some major adjustments with my swing, but honestly, that's not really what happened. And it was like the next day. Oh yeah, it was a Friday. I'm sorry, it was a Friday, and then on Saturday we played against Brockport. And I think I homered on like my first at bat in a big way. I homered on like a high fastball, and I was just like, okay, like I started to feel really good. We start to play some really good baseball. We clinch a playoff spot, and then we go to the conference tournament in Cortland. And dude, like I don't know what it was for me, but I get there and I have this dreamish experience where we're warming up in the outfield. It's a beautiful day. I'm looking around. I'm standing next to my best friends. I'm I'm like I'm just in awe of the experience. I feel like I'm in Cooperstown again. It's a credit to Cortland. Hate you guys, but a credit to Cortland. Their complex is beautiful. Their field is gorgeous. Their facilities are incredible, top of the line stuff. And I'm just looking around saying to myself, you know what, if this is the end of the road for me right here, like that's okay because I'm having so much fun right now. This is a beautiful experience. And I wind up having a good conference tournament. We lose the first game to Oswego. Bottom of the ninth inning where it's a tie ball game. We tie it up in such a sick way. It was a sick, sick game. And the bottom of the ninth comes up, first batter, try to get a fastball in underneath this guy's hands off the zone, hoping he's going to just take it, and then we can kind of get something outside on him. And when I tell you this ball was in on his hands, this kid just flicks it over the left field wall. Game, first pitch. I was like, holy shit. So they win on that. We get into an elimination game against, I think it was Brockport. Yeah. And my friend had tore his ACL on the summer before, so his likeliness to play that year was minimal. And then he hurt something else with his knee in the beginning, like the first practice of the year, so he was down for pretty much the entire year. But then the last series, he was healthy, and he had a choice. He could just redshirt for the year and take an extra year, or he could sacrifice the year, play in that series, and then be ready for the conference tournament, and that's what he decided to do. So it's a tie baseball game. It's the bottom of the last inning now, and my friend Justin, who's my roommate in college, he gets put in to hit. And what does he do? Guy on second base, he hits a freaking single to left field and scores the winning run, a walk-off win, and that was like the first playoff win in New Paltz for like 15 years or some shit. It was a freaking movie-like experience, dude. And again, I get the chills right now just thinking about it, but it was just another one of those moments where I'm like, when I'm coaching kids, I'm like, I want every fucking kid that I coach to have some sort of experience like this. Every single one of them to have an experience like this, because that is the shit that you talk about for the rest of your life. And so we win that game in a big way. Unfortunately, we lose to Oswego again, and we get eliminated. But I should say too, shout out to Connor Donachie in that game against Brockport, threw about 165 pitches and did not get the win because he came out, and then a freshman came in and closed the door, and he got the win. So, sorry, Connor, but I just had to say that. But yeah, so that's the end, and we lose, and it's not overly emotional for me, right? Like immediately. I should say that the game happened the previous day, meaning we were playing, it started to torrentially downpour in the middle of my at-bat, which wound up being like a 15-pitch at-bat. It's pissing. You can't even really see, but I'm fouling pitches off, fouling pitches off, fouling pitches off, fouling pitches off. It's a 3-2 count, fouling pitches off, fouling pitches off. The game gets suspended. We tarp the field. That whole night, I'm like, what am I going to see tomorrow? Like, am I going to see the same pitcher, number one? What's he going to throw me? And then I show up the next day. Again, my friends are all like, dude, what are you going to see? Like, what's going to happen? What are you going to do? And I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, hopefully I get a hit or something. And it's just so anticlimactic because he throws me a bowling ball curveball in the dirt and I walk. So, so yeah. But anyways, we wound up losing, and it doesn't really like set in. we didn't lose in a very big way, but they handedly beat us. And then one of my teammates, I believe he was the shortstop, I, a guy who's kind of like ice cold, not in a negative way, but he's just very like, just one of those guys that's very head on and just doesn't. He's not a very emotional guy, but I'm like putting my gear away and I pick my head up and I look at him and he's crying and he just comes over to me and daps me up, hugs me and stuff, and that's when I kind of realized, the I guess the impact that I had on the team and my teammates, and it was a positive thing. And then this guy who was a sophomore now, but as a freshman, we had an interesting sort of relationship where he was, a big swinging guy, and not a big swinging guy as a hitter, but just as a pitcher, and thought his, shit didn't stink. And I was a guy that, as a junior who had some college baseball experience, came up to him and was like, dude, you got nothing on the freaking baseball card at New Paltz right now. Like, nobody gives a shit what you did in high school, type of thing. That was our initial reaction. And then, we became really good friends. He was freaking crying his eyes out and hugging me and stuff after the game. So I really, got to see that. And I was always the last guy out of the dugout, just because, we could say that because that's what I felt I needed to do, or just because I took a lot of time to get my shit together. But I also was the type of guy that liked to take my time doing those things and kind of soak in the game, whether it was positive or negative. So I was typically the last guy out. So I had a good amount of my teammates come over to me, and I felt a lot of respect for them, from them and for them. And I appreciated that a lot. And once I was able to get my stuff together, I got out of the dugout, and, I'm seeing all my fellow senior guys now just crying. And then I was getting emotional too. So my parents and stuff. And that's when I had said to myself, like, this is it, man. There's nothing better than finishing like this. I mean, I know we didn't win. It would have been great to win. I shouldn't say there's nothing better, because fuck that. I wish we won. But just that quality of experience on your last game was really special for me. So I'm very grateful for that. Grateful for my teammates. I love you guys. And it was just, it has me a little bit speechless though, just talking about it right now. But and then it was what's next. So I had to I decided that was the end of the road for me as a player. I had previously scheduled a workout for the Rockland Boulders. It was an indie ball team that was relatively close-ish between New Paltz and home on Long Island. So, but I was like, I don't want to do that shit. I don't think I want to do that. And and you know what? I could say that. I could say I didn't want to do it, but I very well could have gone to that tryout and not made it too. So it goes both ways. I just want to say that. I don't want to be an old man that says, if this, I could have, in that, and whatever. That's what happened, man. I could have not made the team. I could have made the team, whatever. But that was the end of the road for me. And I was happy with that. So I did have to finish my degree. I did have to stay another semester. And again, coach summer baseball. Started, I think that was the first summer that I coached with Mark, who's been my travel baseball assistant for 5 or 6 years now, and freaking best dude in the world, one of my best friends, and he did such a fantastic job. I'm so grateful for him. Making that move from a player to coach was so fun to watch, him being a couple years younger than me, and doing such a freaking good job with it. And he's an incredible coach, an incredible instructor. I was so grateful to get to work with him for years. But that's when it started, was the summer after my senior year. And I have to go back to school now, but I don't know what the hell I'm going to do. I know I'm going to finish history degree, but I don't know what the hell's next. Fortunately, I know this guy, Steve Morse, who was the head coach at the time over at Ulster County Community College. He reaches out to me, and I knew him because I played with his brother Bobby over at Dowling. And now Steve reaches out to me and asks if I want to be an assistant coach at Ulster while I finish up my degree. And Ulster's probably about like 25, 30 minutes away from New Paltz. So I'm like, yeah, sure, dude. I fucking love this shit. Let's do it. So I'm going over to Ulster regularly, getting some community college baseball coaching experience, which was so fun. I'm working with a lot of kids that are from the city, and a lot of guys are Spanish-speaking guys. There's a good mix of like the like guys that are, just English speaking dudes from like the Hudson Valley, and a good mix of guys. There were a lot of kids that were Dominican from the Bronx and Brooklyn. Those guys were incredible, man. And at the time too, I was taking a lot of Spanish classes because I did enjoy studying Spanish, and they did a very good job of teaching me some Spanish. And I realized, similar to what you described, that it goes a long way to for me, because again, I didn't go a deep dive and totally learn Spanish the way that you did, but I definitely spoke Spanish to them a lot, and I messed up a lot, and they definitely laughed at me a lot. And but when I'll never forget, they were hitting one time, and I said something to them in Spanish. The way they looked at me was like in a funny way, but also like in a way of respect. So I saw the weight in meeting a player on a common ground, getting on their level to relate with them was just so important, and went such a long way with those kids and with me, man, because I was so grateful for them being so welcoming to speaking their language, and patient with me and speaking their language and teaching me things. I was so grateful for those guys. And they went on, I wound up moving back home after that semester because I was done with school. And I wasn't able to continue coaching at Ulster because it was not really conducive for me to be driving from Long Island up to Ulster to coach and stuff. But they did wind up going on to win a regional that year. So shout out to them. They were fantastic. And Steve was awesome with me and taught me a lot about college coaching and just coaching in general and how to manage those kinds of things. But what I was afforded to do when I moved home was I took an assistant coaching job over at Connecticut High School, which, Rob Berger had became the head coach, and his assistant coach, Frank Stabe, which they were both the JV coaches when I was in high school. So they reached out to me and asked me if I'd want to jump on and be one of the coaches there. And of course, I couldn't say no. Getting a chance to coach at my old high school, which was such a rewarding experience. And that first season, we had such a great group of kids, and a couple guys, like I think so many guys went on to went on to play college baseball, and some of them are now even coaching, which makes me feel old, but it also makes me super proud to see some of those guys doing things like that. But that first year, we went on to win a county championship, which was so fun.
What year? This was in 19?
2019 against
Yeah.
Kyle, coaching over at Ward Melville.
Yeah.
But
Did you think in high school that you would ever be coaching
No,
for the high school?
no. I never thought I'd be coaching, number one, and it was completely out of the realm of possibility in my brain that I would coach over at the high school that I had played at. So
Like you didn't feel like worthy to it, or it seemed like too much of a big time
I
thing?
just don't think that coaching was ever a thought in my mind in any capacity until I just started doing it. I did it, like I said to you, I started doing the clinic stuff. I was like, oh, this stuff's pretty fun. It's cool working with kids. And then, here I am 10 years later and, still doing it. But, so coach, that was my focus now, was coaching at Connecticut in the fall. In the spring. We did fall stuff too, voluntary fall workouts, those kinds of things. I was still coaching with the Titans over the summer. Now I was doing catcher metrics, which I should have mentioned this too. I was doing catcher metrics now. Once I talked to Tommy about coaching, Caputo about doing the Ducks, then I'd reached out to Downey about helping out with metrics, which is when Kyle and I started interacting a little bit. I was working over at catcher metrics while I was in college. But more so when I finished college, I was definitely all in on that stuff, doing prospect camps, doing, the whole nine, what you're doing, whatever you're doing. If you're a travel baseball coach, parent, player, you know exactly what I'm talking about, just going absolutely all the way in on that stuff. And it wasn't until I think 2020, so that's what I'm doing, 2020 hits. I had worked part-time-ish at a restaurant as a waiter, and COVID hits. Then I decide, after COVID, subsides a little bit, and we're seeing that we can get out onto the field for summer baseball. The high school season gets canceled. We're seeing that we can get outside for summer baseball, so now I'm doing that, and I get contacted by one of the owners over at 365 Athletics, which is where I do my lessons now, and they asked me if I wanted to do some private lessons over there, and I was like all in on that, absolutely. Um, so now, I'm doing my lessons over at 365. I'm coaching over the summer. I'm doing fall stuff at Connectquot as well as my lessons. I'm doing the metrics in the winter, doing Titans winter workouts, doing all this stuff, camps, clinics, you name it. And then I start getting involved with the catching classroom, and yeah, and
And then
very.
you came up with behind the mask
I just
somehow.
came in and just took over. But that's when the idea of forming leaders started to kind of get into my mind. It was always part of the curriculum for me to help guys, find their voice and and realize that they have an impact beyond their playing ability and their skill set. Did I think in my earlier years of coaching, like, hey, there's life after baseball and whatever? No, because what the hell was I doing? I was doing more baseball. It was about me trying, my goal was to try to help guys have the experiences that I described to y'all here
I remember,
about
so now we're at the point where we had met, we weren't really friends yet. This is like uh late summer of 20 or
19.
around there.
19.
Yeah, no, you're right. Um,
I know because it was
and
pre-COVID. That's the only reason why I know.
right. No, you're right. So you had helped us out. Like I couldn't, me and the assistant coach, like couldn't both, we both had a conflict. We couldn't do a practice or something or like a one-off game. So
It was a
you,
game.
okay. And you, and maybe Mark, but definitely you came in just like ran the show for a little bit. And, so I kind of owed you one in a sense. And then something happened where Mark, your assistant, couldn't do a game in like Staten Island or
Mm-hmm.
something. I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, Staten Island.
And so I went out to help to basically like get you back to help out. Like I was just gonna go be assistant coach stand at first.
That was fun.
And yeah, well, it was cool because we got to drive back and forth. But um, two things that stuck out to me during that was the first was how much it was a short game. I mean, you guys were it was a stud team. You were beating good teams by 15 runs in 2 innings. It was like one of those. And like you had some former pro player or some future pro players and upper level D1 guys on that team as 13-year-olds. But so over the course of 3 innings, maybe 45 minutes, I had seen you have like mentor style, uh, like life lesson type discussions with players just integrated in them playing. It was one of them like, hey, like I need to give you, you need to take responsibility for this. If he's not getting over there, that's on you. Like you challenged him and gave him responsibility. Someone else, they were frustrated and you're like, hey, I know you're frustrated right now, but, and you would accurately understand what they were going through without them necessarily saying like, hey, this is how I'm feeling. I have a problem. You just read it and then gave them kind of what they needed to hear throughout all of it. So I was very like keen on that. I was like, whoa, like I think this is like the best youth coach I've seen, and he's 20 something and only a few years into it. And the other thing was when we drove back, you were, we drove back from Staten Island, which is a couple-hour drive, and you just like ranted for the first probably 35 minutes of the drive about like things that should have happened. I think you guys won. I don't even know if it was a win or a loss. It wasn't like a heartbreaking thing, but you were just so consumed by how the game went. And those are two lasting impressions of mine of just getting to see you in your element. As uh, again, before we had become friends, but I guess I bring that up to your point of the leadership stuff and wanting players to have the experience you had was already, like you said, part of your curriculum. Like you're already about that.
Yeah. I think for me, it was uh, this is what I say to players when I would say 2 points. Number one, I was not the person that you see now when I played. Like I described before, I was very emotional, a lot of times angry when I played because I wanted to win. And so I've experienced the the weight and the influence those emotions can have over me as a player. And I decided when I became older, and especially as a coach, that there's some usefulness to that because it helps with your drive, but there's a lot of other distractions that come along with that in regards to doing what you need to do. So whether like a lot of times I think people meet me or watch me coach and they think that I'm like some freaking level-headed dude, and if you really know me, that's not really the case. I experience such an array of emotions, very, very similar to most people. So I think I can relate to players in that regard. Sorry, I should say 3 points. Number two, it's when I'm coaching a player, I I don't just see what's happening right now. I see what's going to happen if these behaviors, tendencies, and actions continue this way. And I see them being disappointed at the result of that. So,
Mm.
case in point, something simple to kind of grab to. If you're not somebody that tells your pitcher to get over as a catcher, like, yeah, most of the time it might be fine. Maybe they just know their job and they get it done, but maybe it's a big game. You don't remind them to get over. Now the pitcher doesn't get over. The team gets an extra out. The guy steals second base. Next kid hits a double, run scores, game's over. And now I just see all my boys really disappointed. And like I said, the best thing in the world is watching my guys being nice and excited and happy after a win. That's my favorite thing about the game, other than the stuff in between games and having good relationships, friendships with your friends. But the best thing on the baseball field is seeing that for me. Seeing your boys just freaking going nuts and being happy after a big win. So that's what I see when I see something like what you're describing, when I'm seeing some sort of thing that's, correctable, coachable, and whatnot. I don't just see it in the moment. I see what happens if that stuff kind of continues. And I do let them know that. I've had conversations with players like that many times. And what I also say to players, like I said this, my first day on as a college coach, as a college assistant coach at St. Joe's, was I've been every kind of player. I've been a guy that was the worst player on the team. I've been a guy that was the best player on the team. I've been a captain. I've been a learning guy. I've been a guy that's about to be a captain. I've been a guy that's a role player. I've been a bullpen catcher. I've been an outfield. I've been a pitcher. I've been a first base. Again, I'm not saying I'm going to teach you how to be a first baseman. I'm just saying that there's a chance that I know how you feel, or I can relate somewhat to how you're feeling right now about what you have to do. And I'm not here to tell you how I did it and it's the right way and it's the only way and this, that, the other thing. All I'm letting you know is I know your job's tough right now. I know your job's tough. I know your job has value to it, but let's take a different approach, or let's refine the approach to getting this job done. And I say that to a lot of guys because, and I've said this in parent meetings too, when you get your travel baseball team and you're talking to the parents, I'm like, I'm not some freaking some entity that the Titans plucked out of the sky and said, "Here's your freaking coach." I'm a dude. I started out playing youth baseball. I played travel baseball. I played high school, college baseball, and I've been coaching. I know how this shit goes. And when I find something new, I'm gonna go to my resources and try to seek more knowledge. And when I mess up, I'm gonna try to do better and all that stuff. So just that human element to it, I like to kind of shed light onto the players and parents and people involved because, we're all not perfect. But I'm also going to say shit like, hey, dude, Mr. Doctor over there, I don't follow you to your job and tell you, oh, maybe you should use the scalpel there, doctor, or whatever. So, let me do my thing too. Let me work. Let me cook, all right? That's what I try to tell the people as well, because there's the give and take. There's the give where I'm going to shed light on the humanity, but at the same time, like, listen, man, I do this shit. I don't just wake up and randomly decide what the players are going to do for that day. But that was a fantastic team and a really good experience that I had with you over in Staten Island, minus the drive. Hate that drive. It's really, really brutal, really brutal. But that's I had that. That was a really good experience in 2020. Got some more quality experiences as a varsity assistant coach for a couple years. A lot of league championships, no more county championships, unfortunately. But a very good experience getting to watch a very veteran team in 2019 win a county and then go from that to having such a young team from 2021 to 2023, and seeing you're really seeing your ideologies and your culture being put into practice, because you're instilling your culture, stuff I learned at Dowling, at New Paltz, at Connecticut as a player, travel baseball, and you're trying to put those things into practice with those kids. So it's the 2023 class. They're up, as sophomore, freshmen from 2020 to 23, and you're telling them the stuff that this is why you got into coaching. This you want to shed light on things that you feel is necessary to help guys get to that level, to get to the level you got to, and beyond. And I was so proud, talking about stuff like you got to be getting in the gym, and you need to be doing your extra work, and you need to be holding each other and yourselves accountable in those things. And that 2023 class, I believe, was pretty big, had about 15 kids in it, and I think 12 or 13 kids went on to play college baseball. So I was super, super proud of that group. And again, we didn't win a county championship, but in 2023, I got the opportunity to be the head coach that year, and getting to coach with Mark and with Mike Rizzatello as my assistant coaches that year was an unbelievable experience. Going from coaching under Rob Berger for 4 years, I believe, and he did a very good job of letting me be who I was. He did a very good job of letting me coach. He was not somebody who micromanaged me and told me that I needed to do this or that. He was somebody who allowed me to be the coach and person that I am and that I was. And then he had Mark as well there with us. He did a very good job of that. And he also did a very good job of, he got turf for that program and all these different facilities and stuff. So it was very good. It was a very good experience over at Connecticut. But after 2023, I decided to, take a chance at coaching in college. And Tommy Caputo reached out to me and asked me to coach over at St. Joe's. I had a really nice conversation with him in a diner, actually, and we're sitting there talking, and he's like, he's not really grilling me, picking my brain or anything like that, but I wind up getting to this point that I've said a lot, and this is kind of like one of the last things I'll say in regards to my culture talk things, but I think I've said this here too, actually, which is kind of spoiling it, but my biggest gripe is, I said this to Tommy, and I think this is why he was super pumped to have me on staff, but my biggest gripe with coaches is that coaches feel like there's no more learning to be had. My biggest gripe with coaches is that they feel like they've learned everything and that they have the pinnacle of baseball knowledge and experience. And I think that my biggest advantage is that I am somebody who always feels kind of dumb, always feels like I need to learn something more, is okay with being wrong. If you get the chance to watch the coach's playbook, especially the one with Doc Rivers, an incredible experience. Never be afraid to get fired. Always be willing to take the chances and connect with your players. So that was what I shared with Tom that day, and I think he was, after that conversation, he was very pumped to have me on staff, and it's helped me throughout this process of being a college baseball coach for the last year and a half now. And it was very fun to watch us win a conference championship in my first year as a college coach was a lot of fun. So, and getting to learn from Tommy and Coach Ashatino and even Elliot, this guy's a couple of years younger than me. That guy's a freaking awesome coach. I know we're going to have him on here. But yeah, that's been my baseball coaching experience and baseball experience up until this point. We talk a lot, baseball people, we talk a lot about what the game takes away from you, because you always think about, the fact that you maybe couldn't have had a shitty farmer's tan, maybe you would have had a really good tan evenly, or the fact that, I only went to Fire Island as a Long Islander. I went to Fire Island for the first time at the age of 17 or 18, and apparently that's sacrilege as a Long Islander, but, or you miss out on beach days because, you're playing in a different kind of dirt. And but this game has just given me so much. It's given me the best of friends, yourself included, and it's given me the best mentors and all the coaches that I mentioned here, and the best, just the best teammates, the best people, and I cannot go without saying this. The biggest support system's been my parents and believing me in this entire process, dude. It really goes without saying that, but but I'm gonna say it. My parents have just been absolutely stellar. I could not be any more fortunate from my experience in baseball thus far because especially of my parents, and they've been nothing but supportive and incredibly just involved, not in some negative way, involved in a very observative way, and I appreciate them so much. So it's really been great, and now getting to do this podcast with you and taking this to another level is kind of surreal, honestly. So I've been super grateful.
Well, me too. It's been wonderful watching you go through your story. I particularly enjoyed the early stages of it,
Yeah.
just like what you're like as a kid and the fire you had inside you and your love and desire for the game and things that I know to be strengths of yours now, but to see how prominent they were for you at the time was very cool for me personally. But I think there will be many players and players in that like high school, early college, late high school range, parents of them, and then uh, other coaches that work with those guys to hear your story because it's good to see perspective of someone that goes through some of those different things and what your mindset was like at the time. Because players that are juniors in high school that are, college is coming really soon, guys that are transitioning into college or they're out of different kinds of situations, they don't really know what it is yet or what they hear things but they don't know yet. So to hear someone talk about what it was like through the eyes of that age at the time is very uh, it's a nice thing. So
Yeah,
I
dude.
appreciate you for going through all that.
Yeah, but listen, man, it's as somebody who it's literally been baseball my whole life. It's always been it. Um, it's interesting to go through that again, you know. It's interesting. It was definitely I I I can't help when I go through shit like this to feel like I forgot something or maybe missaid something. I can't help but feel like that because that's just kind of how I am. But it's that was the experience, dude. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. And again, like I can't say enough. The coaches from that first travel coach to my in-house coaches, you know, people some too. Again, I just wanted to shed light. There's just some coaches I've had that are no longer with us that have passed away since, and I'm grateful for them and the lessons that I've learned from them, and the coaches that I have that are still around. Some guys are still around the game, some guys not. Those guys were incredible, incredible people, you know. So I every coach that I've been so blessed to have so many coaches that cared about me and that helped my overall experience as a baseball player.
Absolutely.
But
So
again, I want to say this again. I was not sitting there like I'm going to be a coach just like this guy. It's just kind of what happened, you know. I would say the one person that truly inspired me to become a coach was Tom Caputo. Watching that guy, I think he's the pinnacle of baseball coaches. I watched that guy my first year and was like, this guy's the freaking goat. I want to do what this guy does. Like he walks it like he talks it. He jumped on. Just to tell you a quick story about him. I'm sure when we have him on, I'll mention this. But we're playing in an inter squad, and he freaking is playing first base as a guy on second base. He's 40 at the time. I'm catching. Line drive gets hit just past where the first baseman plays. He full extension dives to his right. From his knees, throws the guy out at second base because he was off the base from the line drive, double play. And I'm like, holy shit. So I'm like, all right, this guy's a freaking stud. Like, this guy's he's the man. So he really inspired me to become a coach. Listening to the way he talks, and again, I'm not going to spoil too much because we will have him on soon. Um, it was like if I can do a fraction of what this guy does, man, I'm doing good work.
I've had some interactions with him, not nearly to the extent of yourself, but each time I'm around that guy, I'm like, this is just a superior human, and I'm I'm
He's a
looking forward to
beast.
picking his brain. Yeah.
He's 50. He's the most jacked dude I know. Period.
Oh my God. Yeah. Goals.
Yeah.
So, all right, man. I think we got to wrap this up. You have to get going.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I got to get over to practice soon, but This was a fun one for sure. I cannot believe that I talked for that long, but that was a fun one.